C'est bon? All right. Bonsoir, bienvenue à notre dernière réunion avant la pause pour cet été. Alors, roll call, tous les membres du conseil sont présents. And we'll stand for territorial land acknowledgement and statement and moment of reflection.
We acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and the traditional lands of Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Kanien'kehá:ka peoples. And we acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and the natural resources contained within.
Merci, conseiller Lalonde. Attendu que le Canada est fondé sur les principes qui reconnaissent la suprématie de Dieu et la primauté du droit, prenons un moment de réflexion personnelle.
Il s'est porté la croix. Son histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, item number 4, additions, deletions, or amendments. Hearing, seeing none. Item 5, motion to approve the agenda as presented. This is moved by Councillor Deacon, seconded by Councillor Lauren. I'll call for the vote. All in favor and pass. Thank you. Item 6, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing, hearing none. We move to item 7, adoption des procès-verbaux, procès-verbal de la séance ordinaire du Conseil du 9 juin 2025. Alors, motion d'approuver le procès-verbal tel que présenté. And this is moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Lalonde. A call for the vote, all in favor, and passed. Merci. On tombe à numéro 8, présentation. We have none. 9 delegations, petitions. Est-ce que ça va?
Can I just ask who was the mover seconder for the last one?
Moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde.
Thank you.
On va trop vite, excusez-moi. Je vais me reposer, je vais ralentir. Je vais prendre ça mollo. Alors, on avait 8 présentations, il n'y en a pas. Délégation, pétition, on n'en a pas. Item 10, consent items. All consent items listed under the consent items will be enacted by one motion. A majority vote is required for the adoption of consent items. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless a request is made prior to the time Council votes on the motion that a consent item is to be separated from the motion. And then the separated item shall be considered immediately after. So motion that all items listed under consent items be received as presented. And this is moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Lauren. Call for the vote. All in favor? And passed. Merci. Alors, on tombe au numéro 11. 11A, Public Engagement Report, CSAS-COMMS-2025-01. That Council receives report CSAS-COMMS-2025-01 dated June 23, 2025, for information purposes, and that the administration returns to council in late 2025 with an action plan and a public engagement policy and toolkit. We're very excited to have Ms. Montgomery here from Red Brick Communications to present this work that has been started for quite some time. So I think as part of our strategic plan, we had committed to improving how we engage with our community, not just more often, but more meaningfully. So tonight's report from Red Brick Communications will help us look at that and see to take the next step. I wanted to highlight a couple of things before we get into the report, I think that are worth mentioning. So first of all, more than 900 residents were involved. Staff and council participated in the process, giving us a strong representative sample. I was happy to see that the findings confirm what some of us already had a feeling, is that Russell already is performing above average when it comes to public engagement. Having said that, there are some great ideas. And so we know that there's more that we can do here to reach more people, to communicate more clearly, and to show how public input shapes our decisions. So it's a great path forward. So thank you everyone who contributed to this process. I look forward to the discussion ahead. Monsieur Dagenet.
Oui, bonsoir, Monsieur le maire et chers membres du conseil. Tu as très bien résumé l'introduction que j'avais préparée.
Je te l'ai volé, excuse-moi.
Donc, comme tu as mentionné, là, nos prochaines étapes seront de revenir devant le conseil d'ici la fin de l'année avec un plan d'action concret accompagné d'une politique d'engagement public et d'une boîte à outils pour faciliter la mise en œuvre. Finally, I'd like to introduce Andrea Montgomery, lead consultant at Red Brick Communication, who is here this evening to present the findings of the study and answer any question you may have.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Montgomery, before you start, I would just ask if we would like to suspend the rules of procedures following the presentation and allow for public questions. So I need a mover and seconder for that. So moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Lauren. Call for the vote to suspend the rules. Approved. Thank you. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Through your worship, thank you very much for having me here today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come back in person and connect with all of you again to answer any questions you may have. And I think a key thing to start it off is to really thank the community for their engagement, for their input, as well as council, as well as staff, as you mentioned, in terms of coming forward, caring about their community, and wanting to respond and give their feedback on, what are their impressions in terms of how the township engages now, where are there opportunities to improve that, and their input and feedback really helped shape the report that you have in front of you now. So if we go to my next slide there, the purpose of the report, and I just want to be clear about some expectations around this report, is the idea here is to support and shape discussions and next steps for decision-making when it comes to public engagement. So it's about supporting the planning, it's about providing some insights, giving some perspective around best practices, what we're seeing in other municipalities, and offering, hopefully, what will be realistic and practical recommendations or things to consider as you move forward. By no means do we expect you to do, or do I expect you to do everything that's in this report. We have to be practical and realistic with the capacity that you have, with the resources that you have available to you. And there's a lot in here. That said, we want you to be able to have some discussions that are informed about where do we go from here, what are the priorities for you as a township in terms of what you want engagement to look like and where there's opportunities to elevate the current work that you're doing. So, and while this will lead to a communications policy, as we mentioned, that will be coming later in the fall. Again, no policy sort of changes everything overnight, and there's no kind of magic wand to be able to kind of do all of these things all at once. But it will be, a step in the right direction to give some structure and purpose around making sure that any engagement that the township does is meaningful. So on the next slide, We talk a lot about engagement and setting expectations with the community, and a key piece of effective engagement is making sure that roles and responsibilities are clear, accountability is also clear to the community, and we build trust by making sure that we understand why are we here, what are we engaging about, what can we actually influence or not influence, how will that feedback be used. So the purpose of engagement is also to gather perspectives. So you can have any topic, and not everyone is going to agree on that. There will never be a topic that all 100% of people will agree on. You can have anything from where to locate an ice cream shop, where we've seen people on either sides, debating quite passionately about whether it should be there or not. You can talk about how you handle coyotes in a community. It can be anything. So we recognize that public engagement is not about making decisions. It's rather about gathering perspectives from the community in order to inform decision-making. So we want to make sure that that is quite clear. So the purpose really is to be listening, to be gathering different opinions, providing an opportunity to open up that conversation and to welcome different opinions, and then look at those and have a process for coming up with decisions in a fair and balanced way. So next slide. Just to give some context as well, we always, whenever I do these reports, I think, we need to sort of think, what is the broader context that we live in? What's the landscape that we're in right now? We recognize that trust in government is low, sadly, and has declined over years. It's a little bit steady. There's an agency called Edelman that does a trust barometer across many different industries, and government being one of them. So over time, we can see that in Canada, trust in government has gone down. We also tend to see that neighbors, and we know that neighbors and word of mouth and the people that we trust, in our daily lives are the ones that we look to for advice in who we trust. So neighbors are highly trusted sources of information. Also, most people do not engage with local government. That's as sad as that is, because it's, municipal government is really where rubber hits the road in terms of, the work, and your work is visible every single day and touches every part of a community member's life. Many, are, whether or not they are apathetic, whether they're satisfied with the services that are being received, that they don't feel the need to engage. We don't see that a majority of people, unless it's a really, really hot topic, tend to engage or follow all of the processes of local government. We also recognize in general, and we've all, been witnessing this over the past few years, and certainly since COVID, that there is greater polarization that's more visible across many communities, across almost every community. And we also have to recognize that we will never please everybody as we go along, which is part of my comment before. So when we talk about, for example, that neighbors are trusted resources, we recognize that means the municipality cannot always control, quote unquote, what messages people are receiving, because they are hearing it second, third, fourth hand from other individuals. So this is where something like this, and having more of a plan in place, thinking about how do we engage, how do we communicate with the community, can come into play. So on the next slide, just sort of the core statement here, or the foundation of engagement, is really about building and strengthening trust. That's really what we're talking about. So when we do it well, when we do it effectively, when we do it in a meaningful and valuable way, where people do feel heard, where people know how their feedback was used or not used, and they understand the rationale behind that, this is all part of the process of building and strengthening trust. So that's really our core goal at the end of the day. The other thing I'll say is to keep in mind is that government processes, regulations, the layers of government, from what the federal government, the provincial government mandates with municipalities, there's only so much you can control. And some of those processes, planning processes, for example, are quite complicated. And they're not usually things that most members of the community kind of wrap their heads around. And what we often see is planning processes in particular start many, many, many years before any kind of construction actually happens, right? And even though we've had plans in place, we've been talking about zoning through an official plan, we've been doing all of this work for many years, and we got feedback, 5 years ago on an OP, and then we come back and things are now in front of people's eyes. It's often that those processes last longer than their actual memory does. So there is an onus on the municipality to continue to communicate, even short messages, reminding them regularly about what you've done to get to the point where you are right now. So we just sort of think about some of those things in the background as we think about where you want to head with public engagement. So on the next slide, these next couple of slides are really just about what we heard from the community and also what we heard from staff. Starting with staff, there is a clear understanding or a feeling that the township is, in fact, is certainly offering opportunities to provide input. And there is absolutely a desire to hear from as many voices as possible. Staff and council and leadership really do want to make sure that you're getting some kind of, whether it's a scientifically representative sample at each turn, but that you at least have a variety of voices that are coming before you, because this is all about gathering different perspectives. There's definitely an openness for tools, for more structure, for understanding who does what does that all look like? So all of this is leading in the right direction in terms of where you want to head with this policy and why you're putting some emphasis on this project. One other piece we heard a lot is that newcomers, youth, seniors are some of the harder, more complicated, challenging audiences to reach, to make sure that we get those voices as part of the feedback. When we heard from the community, again, lots more details are in the report itself. I'm just highlighting a few things as part of this report, but what was great to see is 75% are overall satisfied with the programs and services that they're receiving from the township. So when we have these conversations, and I heard it certainly in my conversations with you, and the question about why don't people engage? Why aren't more people showing up? Or why are we having a hard time getting people to give us a voice? Sometimes we want to know, well, is it because they're disgruntled and they're just not talking, or can we get some feedback as to whether they are actually overall satisfied? And based on what came through on the survey, you have some pretty high satisfaction rates for sure. There is 60%, so above half of the community who responded to the survey as well agreed that there are certainly opportunities available to them to provide feedback. Whether or not they take advantage of them may be a different story. But we also talked about, the other thing I wanted to highlight is there's certainly a sense of community pride. There's a sense of obviously wanting transparency in terms of that decision-making process. The barriers tend to be, and then we often see this in other communities as well, that we hear feedback around, how is my feedback actually being used? So where a typical place where engagement falls flat a little bit is that people come out, they engage, and then we're missing that reporting back. We're missing that, here's a summary of what we heard, and we're missing that this is how we used it to make the decision at the end of the day, or if you didn't use it, what that rationale is. So it's not uncommon to see that. Tricky to find the right time to do engagement, especially if it's in person. And we talked about the transparency piece already. In the next slide, these are really kind of 5 key areas that stood out from the community. You will see in the report, again, there's a full breakdown of the demographics of the respondents. But they're looking for a variety of options. They want to make it simple and flexible, use technology, want to know how decisions are being made. So some of these things about demonstrating listening that I've already discussed with you. So we heard that all through the community survey results. And this next part is helping you understand because engagement and communication are so intertwined with one another. It's important to understand where are people even hearing about the information in the first place. So when we've got township social media, which is great, email news alerts, which is also great because those are township generated content. And then we have fairly close in the top family and friends. So as I mentioned earlier, this is where you don't have as much control, or Kim or any of the staff have as much control about people are getting those messages or what messages they are actually hearing. So it just sort of flags again the importance of making the information easy and accessible, easy to share, to remember, to give to their, and to share with other members of the community. So when we do our training, we often talk about making it easy for people to share your information in a Tim Hortons line, right, or at the coffee shop, or when they're talking to each other. So how do we make it in a way that they pick it up, they remember it, and not only that, they remember it accurately. So that's where plain language comes into play. And just to sort of drive the point home a little bit, I have a couple of slides in the next two that comes from our training. When we do media training and plain language training, we talk about the fact that reporters share and quote plain language messages. So this is like grade 5 to 10 reading level. And what happens then is they ignore, rewrite, or misquote anything that feels really complicated. And I bring that up because the same is true for when people are talking with each other and with your neighbors, and it's kind of the way that we talk to each other. So if you think about, a lot of our processes and some of the language that we use tends to be pretty technical in nature, we are losing opportunities to be able to, we just have to make sure that we explain those very clearly and provide opportunities so that they don't get misquoted, they don't get misunderstood, that they are remembered accurately. So I just want to I'm planting some little seeds as we go through this presentation. And you see that the same thing is kind of emphasized on my next slide about grade level reading, grade reading levels. So at Red Brick, we use Microsoft's Words tool to check grade level reading grade reading levels when we are writing, and that's kind of our best friend to kind of assess, are we meeting people where they are? Because when you communicate in plain language, it reaches people who maybe cannot read well, where English or French may not be their first language. They don't have a lot of time. People are not, even though I'm a writer, and it makes me sad, people don't read anymore. They're scanning information, they're looking at visuals. So we want to avoid misunderstanding and errors, and we want to make sure that at the end of the day, they can get the information they need quickly. So what did the data show at the end of the day? I highlight one sort of key number, which is this 468 number, which is really, this is where we had the average response rate based on the last 8 township online surveys. So what this means is that you are actually reaching having a 95% confidence level 4.5% of the time when you have been doing some of your surveys, which is really something you should be proud of. We don't see that necessarily across other municipalities. So when you look at your approximate population, a sample size of 464, so just below this, actually helps you get to that number. So when we think about your engagement plans and your different initiatives as you go forward, maybe not all of them have to reach a representative sample each time. That's not necessarily the case, and we wouldn't expect you to reach that every single time. Depends on the initiative, its profile, its impact, all of those things. But those that are of high impact, we do want to be thinking about what are those targets that we want to be reaching, and strategically be planning ahead what we are looking for. So we want to be thinking about that. We do also recognize that in person, and you'll see that in the report as well, results in significantly lower engagement rates, and that's not uncommon as well. Not that you don't offer it necessarily, but just know that that's probably not going to be the place that you're going to get the most engagement. And just as a reference in the next slide, I bring up the International Association of Public Participation. They are sort of the global recognized standard when it comes to training and setting standards around public participation. So it's helpful as well, and you'll see this later on next fall as we build out a staff toolkit to help staff members as they're planning their different initiatives. We'll be looking at this spectrum of participation that sort of looks at what is this project we're doing, what's the level of impact, what's the level of engagement we actually have to have to use for this particular initiative, and we can look back to what IEP2 has set as a standard for that. So that's a good resource to have. And then the last thing I want, again, bringing up comparable municipalities and what they're doing. The trend we're really seeing more and more is to meet people where they are, right? So whether that's in the community, whether it's engaging in different ways, that makes engagement very easy for people to participate. So on the left-hand side, that's an example from actually where I'm from, which is where I live now, is the city of Burlington, and they do a food for thought annual event that attracts more than 2,000 people every year, where they have food trucks and they give them free lunch as long as they come and provide feedback. And every department, the whole park is used with booths from every single department, gathering feedback on whatever initiatives they have coming forward. So people can vote. It's very interactive. The kids can play games. There's, beanbag tosses. There's all sorts of stuff where people not only gather more information about their municipality, but you just walk into that's a picture I took when I was there last year. But you walk in and you just suddenly see, oh my goodness, look at how many things my municipality does for me. And you just sort of have that visual right off the top. And then you get to walk around and talk to the different staff and better understand what's available to you and engage with the pieces that you're most interested in. And what that tends to do is get people that you don't normally see at engagement, opportunities tend to come out and participate in something like that. And they may even give a voice on a topic they wouldn't normally do because maybe they showed up for Parks and Rec, but, oh, there's something about the budget. Maybe I'll go over and put my little piece of feedback in about the budget. And then the one on the right comes from the municipality of Clarington. They have kiosks available in their community centers, and that's been a wildly successful thing as well, and that links up with their online engagement portal. So what are we looking for, if you go to the next slide, in terms of what are our overall goals when it comes to engagement? And it kind of boils down to the things you see on this slide, and of course they're covered in the report further. And it's not always about quantity when we talk about this. So sometimes you may get a low number, but we want to be thinking about what's the quality of that feedback. Are we talking to the right audiences? Are they the ones that are going to be most impacted? So we get there by having a more consistent, coordinated approach. We talked about ease and simplicity, of course. We talked about offering different levels of engagement, being visible in the community, setting clear goals, reporting back, and seeking quality feedback. So that's really kind of at the end of the day, this is what we want to try to do as often as possible. And as a final thing, I just summarized on the last slide the 5 themes that came through the report. And, developing consistent processes, which is where we're going to go with the policy, enhancing skill sets, all of that is part of the putting together a staff toolkit. So even those 2 actions alone will go a long way to starting down this road to elevating how you do and approach engagement as you go forward. Looking at different ways you can do it, enhancing your communications, and then we talked about that reporting back. So the high priority items we looked at in the report, tried to identify, where are the areas that you could prioritize sooner rather than later, what are other ones that may be of lower priority, but again, to really just help shape your discussion with each other to help inform your decision-making as we go forward. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ms. Montgomery. Really appreciate all the work that went into this. It resonates with me on quite a few of the items. I know we're going to be talking a little bit later on about some questioning around our legacy facilities. And so this to me is, there's some great ideas here where we can engage residents where they are. And so I'm thinking Meet Me on Main Street has a great opportunity possibly. I know it's a little bit last minute, but where we can start, connecting with residents on some of those things. And whether those kiosks are simply an opportunity to meet some of the different departments or so on, I think now that we do this more regularly, I think those are great opportunities. So I really like that. certainly a lot of information, so I'm looking forward to seeing staff bring this back. So maybe I'll open it up to council for questions and comments. Members of council? Anything? Councillor Deacon?
Thank you for the presentation. As I was reading it, similar to the mayor, I had a lot of different ideas pop up, and that always speaks to a great process is when people feel inspired through it. So thank you very much. There was one thing in the report referring to citizen panels, and I'd like to know a bit more about what that looks like, because we have very, very active, engaged committees here, advisory committees, and one of the things that I've noticed attending these open houses and the public information centers in the past few months is it's often not the committee members that come to those in person, I notice. It's a different crowd. So I was just looking for what are the similarities or differences between a panel.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. We tend to see citizen panels being a little less structured and not necessarily a committee of council. So they don't necessarily have, you know, they may still have a terms of reference, but it wouldn't necessarily be that they are advising council. But they may also be brought in instead of on a regular schedule of a committee meeting. They might only be brought in every once in a while for a different project, depending on the impact to the community. And what we often see too is that you actively seek out different representatives from different sectors or different demographics or age groups or whatever to offer to be a part of a citizen panel. So it's not, you know, just those who volunteer to be a part of a committee, but you try to get a representative voice. And I can give Northumberland County as an example. When they did their strategic plan, a community strategic plan, they put together a citizen panel that had a developer, it had a farmer, somebody from the nonprofit, from the religious community, from you know, a number of different organizations and or sectors to be a part of that. And then they brought them in at 2 or 3 times during the process to initially get their feedback, then bring back, this is kind of what we heard from the community. What do you think about that? We're thinking about these as our priorities for the strategic plan. What do you think about that? And then brought them back again deliberately once the plan was approved to say, this is what we're at, you know, this is what we've done, and we appreciate, like, this is how your feedback, you know, helped inform that plan, and thank you for that. And then we used them again, actually, when Red Brick came in to do their communications master plan and brought them back again. So they've been a really important resource for them, but didn't have to have the commitment.
Didn't have that formal.
Right, that formal process, nor did they have to commit to meeting once a month or 2 months or whatever.
If I may jump in on that one. So I took interest in that one as well, and what I liked about it is it's like, it reminded me a little bit like the movie business where they have testers come in to test that movie. What are people going to say? And so it's a good way to kind of test and get some. And I also like the idea that it's a potential feeder for committee members as well when
Yeah,
you get
can be.
some of those members. So that's great question. Follow up?
No, thank you.
No? Any other questions? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I was quite pleased, and I read through your full report, and there's some very good ones when you picked up your 4 summary guidelines to engagement, and some of the things that I see here, having worked in the federal government as well, we're no different in some of our challenges here in communicating and contacting our people. And we make some of the same mistakes too, I believe. And one of the things that I've always wondered about was complete information. It's rare that we put out a message that is not all, you know, everything's good, but there's always some negative aspect to everything we do. We can't please everybody. There's 2 sides. Balance has to be done. And we see those people in activists and whatever. They come to council meetings every once in a while, and some of them engage regularly. In fact, we may have some future councillors sitting in this room right now. So it's important to keep that balance in what we say about about our communications, that there are some good things and there's some bad things, and we should acknowledge that some things are not always perfect. But we've chosen this way because, and we've shown the balance of things, and the balance of all the consideration is to go in this direction. That's a key thing to making people who've come to these meetings that may seem to have a negative attitude, make them understand why the township has actually gone that way. And, that was the biggest thing I've seen recently is to have that to the general public.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. I think some of that is in some of the long-term strategies. I think there's ideas for report back mechanisms like dashboards, infographics, where we could communicate with residents to demonstrate where we engage and how we're doing. I think annual reviews of engagement metrics and public trust indicators, I think, are listed as well. So, yeah, good points. Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lalonde.
I just want to thank the team and administration and council for seeing the benefit in putting this report together, doing this work, organizing the meetings, soliciting the views of the public. There's a lot of effort and energy that's been put into this. I think it's been a very sincere effort on the part of a lot of people, and I certainly, having been here for those sessions, appreciated the public input. I hope they'll be satisfied with the amount of work and the seriousness that was shown in sort of putting all this stuff together, in the hopes that when staff come back in the fall, we'll have something very meaningful, not just interesting, but actually meaningful to share back and to implement for the sake of the public and for our sake as well. So thanks for that.
Merci, Conseiller Lalonde. Councillor Lauren.
Thank you. Again, appreciate the report. I guess where it's going to become difficult down the road is, and we talk about it in the report, is where people just don't believe what we say. Right? We can put out every expert report that we can. We can say that we trust that report, and unfortunately, the person's beliefs are different. And because they don't believe what we're saying or what the experts are saying, or multiple opinions, because it's not what they want, right? So how do you counter that? Because that's not poor communication. We've communicated, we've engaged, we've done everything that we can do to get the right information out as we know it, but they still don't either trust it, believe it, or like it because it's not what they want. How do you counter that?
Ms. Montgomery.
What's that?
Do you have I said Ms. Montgomery.
Yes,
Montgomery,
sorry.
do you
Thank
have
you.
a magic answer for that one?
Through you, your worship, I wish there was a magic wand to get everybody to believe all the same things, and to get everybody on board at the same time. So as I said in the beginning, everyone, it does not matter the topic, will have a different matter of opinion. And you're absolutely right that there are some that fundamentally will believe something different than what council has chosen to do. You're never going to escape that. So it's really more about ensuring, as we've talked about, that you're communicating, that you're demonstrating your values essentially every single day. That's really the core of it. So what are the values of this township? What do we believe to be true as a township, and who we are and why we're here? And demonstrate the action where you're following and representing those values every single day and what you do. So we can do that in different ways through the message clearly, but showing in very simple ways, this is how we got here, this is what we've heard, this is why it's good for the township, all of those things. But the more sort of consistency that you provide, coordinated effort, the more that this council is talking with a unified voice, that makes such a significant difference in terms of building trust and showing that the township is well managed. So when we have a good, cohesive relationship between staff and council, and that members of council as well are all on the same page as we go forward. And once a decision, you can absolutely disagree and have discussion and debate at the council chambers. Once a decision is made, we go forward together as a group, and this is how how we're doing this. Where we start seeing or increased risk of more pushback, more resistance, declined trust is in municipalities where maybe that cohesion and coordination is not as strong as in others.
And I think it's important to state that the cohesion may not always be there and that there's good, healthy debate, and I think that's a great thing at the
Absolutely.
council table, but once a decision is made, the decision by council is made, and I think that's where that cohesion is important. So I 100% agree with that.
And you're demonstrating, so I'll just add one more point to that, that you are also, through demonstrating your values, that includes values of respect of the community, of the different voices that you hear. And we can acknowledge that people have a different opinion and acknowledge that this is not exactly what you believe, or recognize that you feel strongly about this. Demonstrate that people are being heard, even if they're not being necessarily agreed with at the end of the day, which is what you do every day on council.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Monsieur Dagenet, anything to add? Monsieur Godin, anything to add from your end?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. No, just want to thank Andrea for coming down tonight, as well as the team led by Sebastien, Monsieur Dagenet, and Debbie and Kim, who are here behind me as well, who led the works.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So, Ms. Montgomery, if I can just get you maybe to move off to the side, we are going to open a question period for any of the members of the public that are here relating to this specific topic item. I don't have my little blurb here for question period, but if I remember correctly, anyone coming up here has to understand that you are going to be recorded and part of the public record of this meeting. And before you come up, just as you come up, to record your name and information on the sheet that's there. So I'll open the question period right now. So any questions from members of the public? Well, there you go. Seeing none, hearing none, we will close that question period then. That means that the report was very good. Thank you again for your time and safe travels. And we look forward to the administration. We look forward to late 2025 to move this process forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Merci. All right. Excellent. Alors, on va de l'avant. Item B, a bylaw to exempt certain lands from part lot control PD 2025. So refer to item 16 in bylaws. Anything to add to that, Monsieur Bourgon? No? Questions, comments, members of council? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah. Again, and this applies to the item 11C as well. When this comes up, I'd like to see, add a drawing of where these are. And in the case of the next item, sorry, I'm jumping ahead here, I don't know where Peacock Street is. And I don't know if any member of council knows right off where Peacock Street is. I'd like to see this on a drawing, at least that much in a one-page report or whatever. Just to say, here's the bylaw, pass it, is not good enough in my mind.
Thank you. I believe the address, I typically, when I do my little research as I prepare, I'll use Google Maps because I do get challenged on some of the streets because we are growing. Is there anything that we can add to that, Monsieur Bourgon, to make it easier for council?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. So if it's the will of council to add a map, administration can add a map.
For these particular ones, I'm comfortable the way it's presented. Maybe I'll just see with the rest of council members. Anyone interested in getting more detail? Councillor Deakin?
I also usually look it up on Google. Often when I do see maps and reports, sometimes they're too small anyways for me to know
Exactly.
the difference. So the interactive nature of other tools serves me well.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're good the way it is. Happy to support you in any way I can, Councillor Armstrong, to go through that process with Google Maps. Any other questions on this particular item? Moving to item C, so bylaw to exempt certain lands from part lot control PD 2025. Again, referred to item 16 in bylaws. On Peacock Street, any questions or comments, members of council? Anything to add, Monsieur Bourgon? Merci. Item D, zoning bylaw amendment, report PD 2025-20. Property known as 424 to 430 Voyageur Place Saint-Embrun. That council received report PD 2025-20 dated June 23rd, 2025, and approved the zoning bylaw amendment to change the zoning of the subject land from R3 zone R3-61 to include the following provisions. I, construction of semi-detached dwellings with secondary dwelling units in the basement. So this is a condition of UCPR consent application B091-2024. Anything to add, Monsieur Bourgon?
Non, rien rajouté.
Okay. Questions, comments, members of council? Seeing none? Councillor Armstrong, sorry.
Yeah, it just there was a requirement to conform to increasing slope stability requirement. How do we monitor that so that we are ensured that all the conditions of this change of zoning are in fact implemented?
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. And I believe Councillor Lalonde had raised this question during planning. Monsieur Bourgon?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So that's, it's being looked at over the subdivision agreement. So all the work that needs to be done. So regardless if it's a townhome, a single dwelling, or a semi-detached, it would need to be addressed. So it's being looked at in the entire subdivision.
The question then becomes, I'm assuming that there will be no occupancy certificate or whatever if any conditions are not met on that.
Monsieur Bourgon?
In terms of occupancy, I know our building official do have a checklist to perform.
And
So
so
I
that,
don't- I don't have the exact answer for council tonight.
so if we can get a follow-up on that, Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, I guess I would ask it this way, is someone from our township staff does review all the conditions prior to allowing the project forward. And then once it is built, we have our building permit process that then goes and verifies everything. Is that pretty much?
Yeah. True, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, Councillor Lorrain. So it's all being checked at the subdivision, and the building itself is separate, so.
Councillor Armstrong, does that satisfy your query? Thank you. All right, any other questions on this item? Questions, commentaires? Non? Alors, on tombe à l'item E. So that council received report PD 2025-28 dated June 23rd, 2025, and approved the application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by the owner of Le Lunetier d'Embrun, Embrun Eyewear, to change the zoning designation of subject property from Village Core Zone with Holding VC-8 to Village Zone Core VC. So essentially removing the holding symbol because we have water units. I assume this was originally added prior to the Ottawa connection, Monsieur Bourgon? Is that right?
Monsieur le maire, donc c'est dans un zonage antérieur.
Ouais.
Donc au moment où Embrun n'avait pas de capacité, dans les derniers exercices du changement de zonage, cette désignation, ce zonage n'a pas été modifié à ce moment-là. Donc ce soir, c'est pour enlever le holding pour pouvoir permettre au développement de ce terrain.
D'accord. J'aurais une question. Est-ce qu'on a d'autres propriétés comme ça qui ont comme des restants de H qui ont plus besoin d'être là?
Pour répondre à votre question, durant l'exercice du prochain règlement de zonage, on va pouvoir valider, advenant qu'il en reste pour cette raison-là, là, qui sont enlevés.
Okay.
Dans certains cas, ils ont été mis en place pour une raison particulière, mais dans le cas ici, là, il y a la capacité pour le développement proposé.
Alors, ma dernière question, Monsieur Bourgon, c'est pour ce développement-là, ce particulier-là. est-ce qu'il y a un coût associé à l'enlever, ce holding-là, pour lui? Parce que c'était pas à cause de quelque chose qu'on attendait du développeur comme tel.
Je vais devoir valider avec l'équipe, là, mais on travaille avec l'applicant ici là, pour vraiment que ça soit conforme puis qu'il
OK.
puisse procéder avec son développement.
OK, merci beaucoup. Autre question, commentaire, membre du conseil? Non? Merci. Alors, on passe à l'item F. The council received report PD 2025-29 dated June 23rd, 2025 and recommend the draft plan approval subject to the list conditions described under Appendix 3 of this report. This is a interesting large subdivision, I think up to 1,800 mixed-use housing types, about 4,000 residents in all. I know that this timeline for this is roughly, it's usually around 20 years, Monsieur Bourgon. Is that reasonable?
Merci, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, it can go up to 20 years. It's all depending of how quickly the demand for construction, but it will definitely vary in terms
Okay.
of time.
In terms of phasing, right now we see phase 1. We don't have any additional details in terms of future phase, what they look like, those phases.
No, at this stage, no, we don't have any information on the further phases. That normally or typically, your land developer will apply by phases, and we enter into the agreement just by that specific segment, and that's typical for any of the construction and development that we see in the region.
Okay. And then in terms of parks, because we've had some challenges with some other developments where the parks are located later on in future phases. In this particular one, I just want to know there's a 6.1 acre park planned somewhere in the middle of the subdivision, but there will be a smaller one that should come early in the development of this phase, of this project?
Yeah, exactly. So there's going to be 2 parks, and the smaller one being part of the phase 1.
Okay,
And the idea is to have that park implemented right at the beginning when you start to see occupancies in that phase.
fantastic. That'll avoid some of the challenges that we have. That I have one other question before we ask council. In the conditions, we talk about 30% affordable housing. What does that mean? I know the 30% what it will mean, but what does that mean in terms of our definition of affordable housing?
So that condition was put in once to reflect the UCPR official plan. And to answer the question of how it's going to look like, we're still not sure. It still
Okay.
needs to be worked on. We want to work with the developer. We want to make sure that it's get addressed throughout the subdivision. So for us, it's a topic that's been discussed a lot over the last year. There's a note, the ouverture d'esprit from the land developer to work with the municipality, work with his home builders to achieve and to address that 30% affordable housing.
In terms of defining that 30% so that they can meet that target, est-ce qu'il y a du travail à faire de notre côté avec les comtés pour aller voir au comté? Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose que moi je peux faire en tant que membre qui siège sur les comtés pour avoir ces réponses-là?
Selon moi, à court terme ou immédiatement, non. Je pense que c'est de laisser quand même l'administration travailler ce sujet-là afin de... c'est un dossier qui est relativement nouveau pour nous, la municipalité, ainsi que les comtés. Fait que je pense que c'est un dossier qui prend place. Là. Donc, je pense que si on laisse les prochains mois aller de l'avant, on va prendre beaucoup d'avancement là, sur ce dossier.
Okay, and I guess my other point is, and my fear would be that, that we leave this to the last stages of this large development where perhaps we didn't get that 30%, and so we go into large multi-residential, maybe fully, not totally planned ahead of time, and then we get, issues as we've had, just in the last few weeks where we have residents that are surprised about some changes and so on. So I'd like to see if there's a way that we can avoid that as we go through.
Ah, définitivement, mais c'est aussi la raison pour laquelle la condition est
en
mise
place.
dès le début, pour que ça soit considéré là, dans le projet en entier.
Merci beaucoup, M. Bourgon. Question, commentaire, membre du Conseil. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, It states in the third paragraph there, further analysis is also needed to evaluate whether anticipated tax and user fee revenues will be sufficient to cover increased demand on municipal services. I'd like to see more about that before I'm asked to approve this. Have some confidence that whether we like it or not, this is going to have an impact on our tax and user fee revenues. The next thing in that same grain is there is a question on whether DCs will be sufficient to cover all of the expenses that we expect to see from this large development. And again, I'd like to have some idea what any gap will be before I vote on that. That could be a large gap, and I know we have DCs coming up further on our agenda, and it will highlight some of the problems we're having with DCs, but I'd like to have that quantified.
Monsieur Bourgon, I don't know that we are able to qualify anything that's going to go over 20 years, because obviously DCs are going to get reevaluated as we go through. And so I think the whole concept of DC is to cover that growth. And so once DC studies are updated, then rates are updated as the development goes on. But Monsieur Bourgon, or Monsieur Godin, is there a better answer to that?
Well, I think you covered part of it for the DC, that one, we're doing the exercise this year. So we want to make
Yes.
sure that we do capture all those new subdivisions that were not included in our current study. With that, we have the few master plans that are considering those lands. So you want to make sure that the DC does reflect that as well. And to have the financial implication at this stage, we're trying to be proactive in a way to share as much information as possible with council. But in terms of the planning process right now, well, it's to approve the condition that needs to be sent to the county in terms of that subdivision approval process. So really the key point here tonight, it's really those conditions that we need to submit to UCPR for, and the municipality as well, and the agency, well, you got Canada Post doing the same thing, South Nation are doing the same thing. So all agencies are drafting those conditions, sending it to the United Counties of Prescott Russell. They'll put everything together to determine what's going to be retained for the developer to proceed with this subdivision approval.
In terms of the cost that Councillor Armstrong is alluding to, is there anything that we can kind of explain on how we are protected in terms of a municipality, in terms of incurring more cost than the value that this is bringing to us at this stage? Is there a way to reassure Councillor Armstrong at this stage that that development is going to be positive on the bottom line?
Well, sorry, through Mr. Mayor. So yes, with the DC right now, that's one of our main mechanisms to make sure that we all the future expense covered. Also, that the land developer will be paying for all those upgrades or the local upgrade required in his subdivision. By phases, we will bring to council more info as the value of assets or what. Like we'll know exactly the type of housing, so we'll be able to provide even more info in terms of expense and revenue when we come to the stage of every phases or to get that subdivision agreement approved by council.
Thank you. Just to check with Councillor Armstrong, is that
Yeah,
clarified?
and, let me get the long term. It comes down to that paragraph that said consideration should be given whether borrowing may be required to fund any upfront infrastructure investments. That concerns me. That's a very concerning statement where we have a great deal of borrowing going on now.
Monsieur Bourgon, Monsieur Godin, in terms of the impact on that, or Monsieur Dagenet?
Merci, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Armstrong, for the question. I think it was important to illustrate all those risks, which are always there when we undertake large projects, such as a subdivision of this size. It's going to be like we said, for likely over 20 years until we reach a full build out. And so I think what the report is showing in the financial implication is a clear indication of all the different risks. And if you look at the bottom of the report in the next step sections, those are really four steps that are identified there that show that we do still have a lot of decisional power throughout the process, as far as if DCs are underfunded. Like Mr. Bogon mentioned, we do revise DCs every 5 years or 10 years. We have a lot of flexibility as far as when we choose to revise that. So that's always a decision that can be taken to revise that. Every year at budget, we adjust tax rates, right? So if the cost of services go up, and if they go up due to the increase in demand, we have that option to raise taxes. We're not necessarily saying that we're going to need to do that. Being a development with a target of 30% affordable housing and some higher density development is usually more cost effective on most of our services, on some of our services, not all, but the next steps here kind of details those mitigation measures that we have and those decisional powers that we have to be able to address those.
Merci, Monsieur Godin. Councillor Deakin.
Thank you. That section caught my eye as well, and I had sent a few questions into administration about those financial implications earlier today. Generally got some good responses, alleviating some of my concerns, but I just have to say it's not lost on me that we have a federal and provincial government who are both trying to build homes faster, and we're sitting here with nerves because we don't know what that legislative framework looks like that's coming down on the municipality with regard to development charges in the next 6 months, a year. And I'm just appreciating the tough spot that we're all in. We want these homes, we want to build these units, we want affordable units for young families, for single parents to be able to access. And we want to be able to rely on growth paying for growth. And so I guess one question that I have following Councillor Armstrong's back and forth is, when would we receive the next financial update on phase 1 in particular, and start to hone in on what those numbers are looking like so that council can be more confident as that proceeds?
Thank you, Councillor Deakin. Mr. Bogon?
And Mr. Ma, so our game plan would be when we bring to council the approval of that phase before entering into a subdivision agreement, to provide those financial implication and revenue and expense that could be tied to that phase.
So we'll see the full financial picture for that particular phase at that time, and if there were to be challenges, we can address them at that time.
Yeah, exactly, and that way it gives us time with the revision of DC, like Monsieur Godin mentioned, you can adjust taxation regardless if that's if it really required. But it's really at the time that we'll bring that phase, or for this to be before entering into an agreement.
Merci, Monsieur Bogon. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Armstrong? Oh, sorry. I'll go with Councillor Deakin.
I'll go again,
Yes,
and then
I'm
I'll pass
sorry.
it back.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Deakin.
So I was just wondering, on the wastewater capacity side, 1,800 units, if we currently have capacity in our wastewater systems to accommodate that, or if moving forward on this subdivision, we're also moving forward on some of those key next steps with expanding our capacity.
Yeah, so I think we're moving into that direction to understand or optimize our capacity and increase the capacity. And so I don't think any phases would be allowed if there are any questions around capacity. Mr. Bogon, can you confirm that?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's some condition to prevent us for allowing building if we don't have capacity. So we have the holding that's going to be applied to that property. So every phase will be reviewed to make sure that when we enter into an agreement, we have the capacity available for that phase. We also put some wording in if you take account all the possible development, we don't have enough capacity. So, but in order to collect DC, in order to try to start to work into that direction, well, there's still room in our system. There's still capacity. So, but we have a different mechanism in place to to make sure that every permit that will be issued, that we do have capacity in our system.
So we have tools to put holds on, to stop at any time, and we also, through the phasing, are able to incrementally approve sections, even though this one is more for a big picture to show where we're going. Because we're doing it incrementally, we're protecting ourselves,
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah, correct. And we want to make sure that like we can see, we can plan that full picture.
The strategic.
By looking at
Yeah.
the full block, we're not, at this point, we're not looking at one phase, but we're really looking at the entire subdivision. So we're able to plan the upgrades of Route 300 as an example, which will receive funding to improve that corridor. So there's those, so it's really the why we want to make sure that we can still proceed with that planification of the entire subdivision.
Merci, Monsieur Bourgon. The good? Okay, Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, the other main area where I had concern was in the density of the development. The report here states we're looking at about 1,200 residential units. J.L. Richards states up to 1,800 residential units. But that's a variance of 17.6 units per hectare to 26.5. Under our own official plan, that's very low density development, because low density goes up to 35 units per hectare. And I don't think we're getting good value from the value of the township in the long term by having just 1,200 to 1,800 units on that piece of land. We should be pushing towards the 35 at least to ensure that we get avoid the need of, in the next iteration of our official planning, bringing another huge lot, similar size, inside our urban boundaries in the settlement area. And so that concerns me, that it's only a maximum of 26.5 units per hectare. What we really need is somewhere the 35 to 50.
Monsieur Bourgon, what can you talk to us about in terms of that density, proposed density?
Well, there's, again, in the condition, there's targets to obtain to reflect, again, the township OP, the UCPR official plan as well. I didn't do the calculation exactly how much hectare or the density, based that once you remove the road, remove the parks, remove all the stormwater management facilities, it's still proposed as a mixed-use density.
So,
And then
so I think what you're saying, and confirm my understanding of it for Councillor Armstrong, is that once you have the net hectares outside of all the other utilities and so on, we are meeting the density requirements from both our official plan and the county's plan.
And we also need to take in consideration, there's still several blocks throughout the subdivision that we don't know at this point exactly what's going to be included. Is it going to be townhouse, stack houses, or how it's going to look like in the other phases? We don't have that information. So obviously that will have a major impact on your density. We need to consider as well that you're allowed to always have an apartment or two in your on one lot. So those are all variables as well that will impact the density.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, follow up on that?
No, I'm going to leave it there, but I'd like to have this pulled out for a separate vote, please.
Okay. Councillor Deakin?
Yeah, I have a question for Councillor Armstrong, because when I was looking at the report, I was seeing those buckets of high, medium, low, and this proposal was overshooting actually the density by those buckets. Were you referring just to phase one as being, is that where you did your math to find
No,
it was around 26?
I did my math on the
Just one at a time,
overall,
please.
sorry, I did my math.
Go ahead.
Did my math on the overall density. The 68 hectares listed in the J.L. Richards report, and they're 1,800 units.
Interesting.
Okay, so we will pull item F. Thank you. Any other comments? Conseiller Lalonde.
Yeah, I just want to comment and appreciate there's a lot of checks and balances that have been pointed out here tonight, and starting with the fact that we're working on phase one only for the time being, and also the known history of how long it can take to, even if we have rapid development, that we're still looking at other phases and all of this work taking at least 7, 8, 9 years to complete. We have the experience in current developments that show us that, and in spite of the fact that they're working quickly to build. You look at Sunset Flats and Russell Trails and appreciate the number of years it's taken. So I appreciate the checks and balances, the opportunities we'll have throughout all the phases to make adjustments if we have to, including the DC charges especially. So I have confidence that, and including capacity as well, this is a big one. This will be quite the test. This is a huge development coming up. There's another one coming up soon as well. We've opened up over 100 acres north of Sunset Flats in Russell. It's to appreciate what might be coming down the pipe on that in the coming months or the next few years. So there'll be a lot of stuff to follow in phases, and to rely on all these checks and balances, which I think we have in place. So I'm comfortable with that. There's a lot of accountability, and there's to council by staff. I'm looking forward to the DC charge report in the fall to get us ready. That'll probably be used for phase one of this eventual subdivision. I want to go back to something that we were talking about earlier about densities, and I appreciate that the book is opened on in terms of interpretation of that 30% for affordable housing and what we might call it or define it as. We did a lot of work, as you all know, a year ago on studying affordable and attainable housing, and we had our own definitions of what that was, including purpose-built housing and workforce, working family accommodation, and the rest of it. So I'm hopeful that we'll probably get to some of those more concrete definitions sooner rather than later, so that the developers understand what's expected of them. On that same note, for the high density, and I've seen it in some of the developments that have taken place between Embrun and Russell, that areas where they were zoned high density, where apartment buildings are expected, that it has taken quite some time. And not every case, but in a few cases, there's been zoning years that have not even started yet, despite the fact that almost 80 or 90% of the subdivision is off. So for me, it's along the lines of the issue of parks, that we want to see some of these things happen sooner during the development process rather than later towards the end. And I would like just to emphasize that I feel the same way about the high density and what is planned in apartment building type development, that when it goes on the books or on the drawings that it's going to be there, that these are things that don't come at the end either, because it's not, I guess it doesn't meet the formal definition of affordable housing, but it's a step into, apartment living rentals. We know through the Hampson study that we have like 0.02% vacancy in rental apartments, rental units throughout the county, and certainly in particular in the township of Russell. And that tells me that, we need to continue to put emphasis on getting apartment building development underway. So I just leave that comment, Mr. Mayor, that I would like to hope that when some of this stuff starts getting approved, that where we're seeing the high density being registered on the plans, that there's a timeline associated with that to the extent that it's possible to do so. Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Lalonde. Any final comments on this item? It will be pulled at the end. Okay, moving to item G. Que le Conseil reçoive le rapport CSAS-FS 2025-13 daté du 23 juin 2025 pour information et préparé selon la section 12 du règlement de l'Ontario 82-98 en vertu de la loi 1997 sur les redevances d'aménagement et autorise que le rapport soit d'information publique. Alors, anything to add on to this, Monsieur Dagenet?
Oui, donc ce soir, on vous présente le rapport. L'an dernier, on a oublié de vous le présenter. De façon générale, la performance pour 2024 a été excellente, avec une augmentation de 35 de redevances par rapport à 2023. De plus, en date d'aujourd'hui, les revenus de 2025 sont déjà 30 plus élevés que ceux enregistrés en 2024. Ces chiffres démontrent très bien que la municipalité est en pleine phase de croissance présentement. Cela étant dit, nous continuons de faire face à l'impact de la loi 23 qui a entraîné des pertes de revenus totalisant 423 887 entre 2023 et 2024 en raison des rabais obligatoires sur les unités locatives. Ces impacts seront intégrés dans notre nouvelle étude sur les redevances cette année pour s'assurer qu'un équilibre à long terme soit fait.
Merci, M. Dagenet. Au niveau de l'oubli de l'année passée, est-ce qu'on l'a remis dans un plan de travail pour s'assurer qu'on le reçoive à chaque année?
Oui,
Okay.
Il fait partie de notre plan d'affaires.
OK, merci. Questions, commentaires? Members of council, questions, comments? Merci. So we are moving to item H. The council receives report CSAS-FS 2025-14 dated June 23rd, 2025, and approve the renewal of the Township of Russell's partnerships with Global Public Affairs, a government relations firm, for a new 6-month term. And so I think we had some good success with this partnership, Monsieur Godin, Monsieur Dagenet. So it's interesting to see it come through. You know, if we look at the costing, for me, it's almost like hiring an expert, you know, and if you look at the overall annual cost on that and the flexibility that they've given us, it's a reasonable amount versus the returns that we're seeing for it. So I'm quite happy to see that. Can I just confirm that we do have that flexibility over the summer months, that as it's a downtime for us, that we're not actively in the contract phase? Is that correct, Monsieur Dagenet? OK, merci. Alors, questions, commentaires, membres du Conseil? Any questions on this item? Councilor Orr.
Well, I think with some of the items that were just discussed in the one of the previous reports, I think it's going to be imperative that we have somebody there looking out for our best interest for federal and provincial grants on things like water, wastewater, infrastructure, you know, sanitary sewers, whatever it is, whatever programs are out there, that whether they come from the federal government or the provincial government or other bodies, that we have that support there, which we've seen has already yielded some tremendous success. So I think it's the cost is well worth the return on that. It was phenomenal so far. So I have no problem with it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none. All right. We're moving to item I. So that council receive report CSAS-FS 2025-15 dated June 23rd, 2025, and direct the administration to proceed with the sale of a 1-acre lot to the Kin Club of Russell, a not-for-profit organization, for the development of a community storage building. An estimated operational and capital budget for this project is included in the report. Administration is also seeking council's direction to incorporate these budget estimates into the 2026 budget. There is, in the report also, there is a request for street naming as well. Anything to add to this, Monsieur Dagenet?
Well, for the street naming, we need to get more information on our site before we can go forward. So it's just information. We're not we don't need any recommendation from council.
So
tonight.
council is not making a decision on that
No.
tonight? Okay. But that will come to council at some point, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. All right, questions, comments, or anything else to add on this, Monsieur Dagenet?
No, I think the report is pretty clear. We've been working together for the last 6 months, the administration and the Kin Club, to move forward with this project. Discussions are going well. And now with budget time coming soon, we'll start that process in September. So if we want to move forward with this project in 26, we need to start adding those figures in, so.
Excellent. Can I get a clarification on the road piece? So we are going to build that road regardless at some point in time. Is that correct, Monsieur Bourgon?
Yes, that's correct. We'll need the access to the rest of the land to access for future facilities.
Okay. And I asked you this question this morning, but just for public's perspective, the reason that we're actually going to do the full build out of the road right away, because one could argue we can just leave a dirt road for the time being and not spend this full amount. There was a good reason that you provided, so can you just clarify that?
So being a municipal road, it's gonna be named, we'll have the proper road allowance, so we wanna make sure that that road, it's to a municipal standard, like we're asking any other developer to bring those roads to a specific standard.
Okay, so the rationale for paving and doing all the work is to make sure that we deliver a road, a full road, as we typically are requesting our developers.
That's correct.
Okay. Questions on this item? Councillor Lalonde.
Just a clarification through you, Mr. Mayor, on, it was mentioned that for future, to meet future requirements for township, what exactly are we talking about there that has to go down that road for township's sake, if I could know that?
Sure, Monsieur Bourgon, for the water, I'll let you.
So, yeah, one thing, we need to pass water through our property to create a redundancy for Embrun and water supply. But also, if you look at the diagram that's included in the report, well, you see that there's a future installation on that property. So we need some kind of an access regardless, once those facilities are put in place.
Thank you. Any other questions, members of council? Seeing none, we'll move forward. All right. Thank you. So we're moving to item J. So that council receives report CSAS-CL 2025-07 dated June 23rd, 2025 and support the Saint Jacques Parish request for public event special occasion permit, liquor and license for its bar operation for the Rib Fest and musical festival activities being held at the corner of Saint-Augustin Road and Notre-Dame Street up to the church parking in the front of 1041 Notre-Dame and also beside the Canada Post Office in Embrun, September 6, 2025 from 4:30 to 11 p.m. and designate the event as municipally significant. And so we had already approved this event and the request that came along with it, but the AGCO is requesting this municipal significance designation. And so this is, if I understand correctly, this designation allows council to confirm that it supports the special occasion permit and that the event serves the public interest or benefits the community. So I think that kind of sums up why it's coming back to us, Monsieur Dagenet. I think it's Monsieur Dagenet. Oh, merci, Madame Caméré-Laflamme.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so you're correct. You summarized everything. We had the closure of the street done by the Department of
Yeah.
Public Safety, and we were waiting for them to confirm that they needed this kind of resolution, and finally, just at the end of the week before the council, they confirmed, yes, they did need that resolution.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so I think the AGCO requires that it's a public event for one, so it's open to the public, and it's a non-for-profit organization, I think, and which meets
And
the
the most
requirements.
important is the municipally significant.
Significant,
That's what they-
yeah. So any questions or comments on this item, members of council? Seeing none, merci beaucoup. Alors, on va à l'item K. J'aurais dû lire le dernier en français, je m'excuse. Que le Conseil reçoive le rapport FIRE 2025-04 daté du 23 juin 2025 et adopte 1. L'amendement du règlement sur les droits et redevances perçus afin d'y inclure les frais d'intervention spécifiques du service des incendies et la technologie d'indemnisation. De 2, une modification à la description des fausses alarmes pour y inclure les alarmes non fondées. 3, une augmentation du frais d'inspection des incendies de 100 $ à 120 $ pour refléter le nouveau taux horaire de 60 $. Et 4, le projet de règlement visant à modifier l'annexe A5 du règlement 2024-97 sur les droits et redevances perçus. Chief, question or anything to add to that?
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. So this report's a follow-up from a report and presentation you all had in February from a company called Firemark, which is a cost recovery method that we can use in the fire service for structure fires or building damages. So this is the follow-up with the bylaw for that. We had to make some edits within the bylaw, the user fee bylaw, to permit this identification technology. And at the same time, I had revisited Schedule A5 that hadn't been updated since about 2017. So we just made some minor adjustments in that schedule also.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments, members of council? Seeing none, thank you, Chief. Item I, noise bylaw amendment. So the council receives report PIC 2025-17 dated June 23rd, 2025, and approve as recommended in the report the noise exemption request for the Russell Fair on Thursday, August 14th from 11 to midnight, for the truck pull on Friday, August 15th, and Saturday, August 16th from 11 to 1 a.m. for outdoor musical entertainment, and also from August 16th from 11 p.m. to midnight for the demo derby. Electronics demo derby. Anything to add, Ms. Bordeaux?
No, this year the Fair Committee has advised us that they will not be seeking high-profile shows, so there should be less people attending. As the last 2 years, I think they went to very high profile, and so this year they do not want to do that. So.
OK. Parfait. Question, commentaire, membres du conseil? No? That's not a question? That's good. OK, excellent. Merci. On tombe à l'item M. The council receives report ISPW 2025-14 dated June 23rd, 2025, and approve the proposed bylaw to award a contract and authorize the entry into an agreement with A.L. Blair Construction Limited for the road construction for $1,182,588.41 plus $20,813.56, equaling a total of $1,203,401.97. This amount includes the 1.76% of non-refundable HST, and that the mayor and clerk are authorized to sign the agreement. Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add?
Merci, Mr. Mayor. So we did proceed to the tender process just to secure our the contractor for work to be done later in the year. As stated in the report, some work can start after July 1st, and the rest will need to wait once we're done, when the 30-day posting period is over. We had to delay that posting since we're still waiting on comments from the Algonquin First Nation, contrary of what we did present to council a few months ago. We're waiting on those comments to be finalized, and then we'll post our 30-day period, likely during the month of July.
So it will be initiated once those comments are received.
Exactly. So we have discussion with the group. We're anticipating their comments by the end of the week. Then to be able to do our 30-day posting period for the EA process, municipal class EA process during July. So the contractor is aware of those time constraints since it was really clear in the tender process.
Merci, Monsieur Bourgon. A couple of points, and then I'll pass it to council. So this project looks viable to me based on future land sales of roughly 135 acres, for which we have demand, correct, Monsieur Dagenet?
As of now, we have a waiting list that are looking for about, I would say, probably 50% of this 130 acres. So we will have to we will have to start looking for new investors to be able to sell all the 130 acres.
Okay. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Monsieur Bourgon, if I look at the cost of the berm and the trees, and so the loss of potential land sales there, based on our street master plan decisions that we made, we're looking at a potential loss of roughly just under 17 acres. That 17 acres, which would have been worth about $1.7 million, in terms of that land not being utilized, and I know there's good reason not to utilizing, so that's not my point. But I would like to ask, are we going to be able to recover some of that either by reselling some of that land, by reusing? I think reusing doesn't bring much, like in terms of renting it out. So what are the options in terms of further expansions for us?
In short term, it's going to be leased or rent to a local farmer.
Yeah.
The administration will bring back a report to council for other option that we could be for that area or that 16 acres. So what can be done, but in the time being, it will remain farming and we'll just rent it out.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? I think Councillor Lauren had his hand up.
So if I'm reading this correctly, this came in $500,000 under budget from road construction, and where is the 1.7 coming from? Like, where did we budget it out of?
Bourgon.
So your question is for the 1.2, where there's which line in the financial plan it comes from? It's the MR extension robot to dead end.
Oh, no, I know where the road is. What I'm asking is from a budget perspective, right? It says we budgeted 1.7 million for this road. It's coming in at 1.2.
Okay.
So we have $500,000. So was that from development charges? Was that from a reserve? Like, where did we have the money? And therefore, do we have a surplus amount of $500,000 that can be used for roads somewhere else? Like
It comes from the 417 Industrial Park Reserve. So we can't use that savings on other roads throughout the township. It's just for the
Specific to the industrial park.
industrial park.
Okay, so it
So
stays in that
savings.
and stays in that line, and we can use that again down the road. But the good news is it came $500,000 under budget.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lauren. Any other questions, members of council? Merci beaucoup. Alors, on tombe à numéro N. So the council received report ISPW 2025-15 dated June 2023 for information purposes. And Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add?
Merci, Monsieur le maire. Donc, ceci est simplement pour adresser une question que j'ai reçue ou une directive que l'administration a reçue du conseil. Donc, nous allons offrir aux résidents la possibilité d'acheter un contenant plus grand. This methodology it's used with other municipalities as well. So we will follow the same type of approach. So the resident will be able to pay the difference in the at cost purchase for that larger bin.
Yeah, so congratulations on being able to add some choice for our residents. I think that's a great add-on to the program. And so, just correct me, there's a total of 3 different sizes that residents are able to use for both green bin and the black bin, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So we'll share that information. We do already have a list of resident that wants to proceed with larger green bin. At this point in time, we're simply waiting on the supply to come in.
Okay, and I just want to confirm that those residents that receive the larger bins will not be paying extra for their garbage collection. It's still the same price to put it in the truck. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So it's gonna be in lieu of the tags themselves.
But
The
in
tags
the
were
past,
put-
we would have paid for the tags.
Yeah, but it was put in place for the extra work required for that second bag.
Which there
At
is
this
not.
point in time, there's no extra work for that one larger bin.
It just goes to, for the tonnage piece. Yeah, OK. Merci, monsieur. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bourgon. Questions, commentaires, membres du Conseil sur cet item-là? Je n'en vois pas. Alors, on continue. Moving to item O, road allowance adjustment. The council receives report ISPW 2025-16 dated June 23rd, 2025, and adopt the bylaw, Part 1 of Plan 50R 11774, as part of the public highway being Route 300, and adopt a bylaw, Part 2 of the Plan 50R 11774, as part of the public highway being Saint-Pierre Road, and that the bylaw be registered on title. So I believe this is a housekeeping matter, just cleaning up some of the file naming issues that we had, Monsieur Bourgon.
Yeah, that's correct. There was once the last bylaw that was passed, a part number was used for Saint-Pierre and Road 300, and it needs to be different, so
Okay.
yeah, it's a housekeeping matter at this point.
Okay, excellent. Any questions or comments from council? Thank you. On tombe à l'item P. The council received report ISPW 2025-19 dated June 23rd, 2025, and approved to increase the budget as per the financial implication. So this is a crazy price increase, I think from 750 to 1.25 million. Is there anything that we could do in the future to prevent these unknowns? I believe in speaking with the counties, there was a question that because this project was being pushed, that we didn't have the proper time ahead of time for the regular forecasting that we would do. Is that correct?
That's correct. By trying to fast track, if I can use that terminology, typically we'd have done the design with pricing. We would have come to council, adjust the budget, go to tender in the fall. Then you put your pricing in the budget for construction the following year. In this case, we're trying to fast track design with construction as fast as possible. And also the budget that was used came from our DC study. So since our DC study and design and we went straight to the tender process, there was no period of time where we would have adjusted the budget accordingly.
Yeah, in all fairness, I think the scope of the project changed as well, correct?
Through design, we had to add the turning lanes, and at the same time, the United Counties of Prescott-Russell are taking the opportunity to replace a culvert. So we'll have at the intersection, it's going to be all new assets. So that's part of their cost in the upgrade.
Okay, can you just confirm, do you have any more details on timeline since we're speaking about this?
The similar report will be presented to the county council on Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
If approved, we'll sign the contracts. The culvert need to be replaced within the next month and a half, and then we'll start the construction or improvement of the intersection right after.
And there is timing around the culvert relating to a turtle crossing, is that correct?
Yeah, so we need to wait after July 15, and they need to be done by August 15 for the second contractor to come in for the intersection improvement.
Okay, so we are going to see lights there by the fall.
We're hoping so, yeah.
Okay, I like your answer. Councillor Lauren?
So, I guess I'm a little confused over who's paying for what. the project for the lights was a county project on their radar for 2026. We tried to fast track it to get it into 2024, which then got pushed to 2025. But that was a county project. It's a county road. Why are we paying 1.25, and they're only paying 360, which is essentially the culvert they want to replace on their road?
Mr.
So
Bourgault?
I need some answers there.
Yeah,
I'm
so
confused.
it's always been township paid project. It was identified in our DC to be financed 100% since it's the trigger by the growth.
It's triggered
Yeah.
by growth, yeah.
So that's why it was always put in our DC, in the township DC. So it was in the, being a county intersection, they're leading the project, but it's always been financed by the
growth.
municipality.
Because of the growth.
So in our case, it's still gonna be financed 100% by the DC.
Yeah. Follow up, Councilor Lauren?
So then why did we have to wait for their approval to put it in? If it was always going to be our project, like that's the frustrating part. I think it frustrates me as a counselor. I don't know if it frustrates anybody else, but we have residents that have been asking for something for many, many years with the development behind there, just like we're going to get for this new development in Emblem North, right? That's going to happen. People are asking for safety measures to be put in, and that's one of them at that intersection. And we were told, wow, it's a county road, we have to wait on them, and it's their project. When all along, if we were paying for the project, why didn't we push it? Why couldn't we have pushed it any sooner?
So,
You probably don't have an answer,
I-
but I'm just sharing my frustration with the bureaucracy between the two different
Tiers.
governments when we're paying for the entire project.
yeah, so it still remains their asset, and I think they're doing the building, correct? And so that's where it's like we are paying for it, but they're delivering the service, correct?
That's correct. And
Yeah.
our traffic study that we had, and even in our DC, it was flagged for further on. It was not warrant, even on our side, in our studies, it was not warrant at the time we asked the county to start proceeding with it.
Yeah.
So council, through those different steps, was able to fast track the project, but it was not identified until in a few years, based on our traffic study that we've conducted earlier.
So it is still moving forward faster than originally planned
Yes.
in the traffic study. But the fact that they are the ones that own the asset, they're the ones that are they're controlling when the development happens, essentially. So even though we're paying for it, correct?
Yes, and with different steps that were done, well, it was fast-tracked. So, and here we are today
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
to increase our budget in order the county
To make sure we move as of Wednesday.
to approve the.
So I saw some of our staff at that intersection today already working on doing some measuring and so on. So it's nice to see it move. Follow up, Councillor Lauren.
My last point on it is simply this. If we knew, and regardless of what our study said, residents were frustrated with that corner, council was frustrated with that corner, we could have pushed for this project to have been even further than 2026, like sooner, sorry, than what we actually did, and at a cost significantly lower than what it is now. That's where my frustration comes in, right? Like, we're sitting here going, yes, well, it wasn't in the plan until then. Yeah, but plans change. We've seen plans change. And now, because we're the one paying for it, if that was the case, we should have just said, if it was the will of council, which I believe it was at the time, why didn't we just move forward? And I think it's just a lessons learned. It's not on you, Mr. Bourgault. I'm just very frustrated that council, going forward, then we now know we have the ability to make decisions and push stuff now rather than waiting and seeing what comes down the line and how much cost difference we're going to see. 750 to 1.2 is a significant change, right? We've seen it with our rec complex. Had it been done it 5 years earlier, probably would have been half the price. So I'm just frustrated with this one, Mr. Mayor and members of council, when we're seeing the cost now, had we done it earlier, the cost would have probably been significantly lower.
Was just a couple of points to add to that, but because we fast-tracked, we had discovered some scope changes that were not intentional from the get-go. Originally, we were adding lights and that was it. And then we added those turning lanes based on traffic numbers, and also there was some soil steady issues which delayed the project. And so a combination of those things. So it was like a perfect storm, but I agree with you that, there is a reality. But we also have to deal with the counties at this level because it's a county road. So it's like a perfect storm of issues that have happened. But I'm happy to see it move forward, I have to say. So any other comments? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I just a couple of questions with the actual road construction. That's a significant intersection in our township, and there is no real convenient detour around it. So I'm assuming that the road will be kept open during the construction, including the culvert replacement. Am I correct, or is there something else going on?
Well, I'm not sure we can keep the road open. They will be closed at one point to replace the culvert, but I'm not sure what the timing is, Monsieur Bogo.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So for the culvert replacement, Castor Street will have to be closed.
Yeah. Because it'll be wide open,
Yeah.
like it'll be a big gap there, but
In order to meet the time frame, it has to be closed.
yeah. And what kind of timeline?
That they have about a month to complete that work. So in terms of construction, we haven't met the entrepreneur yet. So once we know more time frame, then we'll be able to share at both level of government road closure. And in terms of the rest of the intersection, then it's going to be by phase as we're proceeding through the construction. But AD and Wade will be closed at some period of time, depending on the construction phases.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Lauren?
I'm going to ask that residents be notified by means of those big billboards at least a week in advance of any detours that are required, not put up either same day or the next day after it's already started, so.
Yeah, I think a good example of that is what we're doing on Notre Dame now in terms of notices. I think that's a great practice. It's way ahead of time, warning the residents it's coming. So I'm assuming it would be the same process.
Yeah, and those means of communication are already included in the contract that the contractor need to put in place a week prior to construction.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other questions on this? Council members? Thank you. Like to look forward to seeing that one be finished. That's a great one. All right, so we're moving to item Q. Resolution to United Counties Prescott Russell, Appendix 1 to Township of Russell Official Plan 2025 adopted under Bylaw 2025-075, Verbal Report IS 2025. I believe that this is from a previous meeting where Council provided direction for zoning amendment, Monsieur Bogon.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So yes, exactly. That's the night that Council did approve an official plan amendment and did accept or adopt our new official plan. So it wasn't that understanding, and Council raised that question throughout that meeting, how those two is gonna coexist in the approbation. So that's coming back just to make sure that Council did understand by having.
Excellent.
So basically, that resolution is just to confirm to the United County of Prescott Russell that Council knew that those two amendments came at the same time.
So the question of the chicken or the egg that Councillor Armstrong brought forward
Exactly,
was a valid question.
So we're, myself and the planning team, we're glad that we had the discussion with Council. So that way it makes that resolution clear tonight.
Excellent. So I'll just read it. Be it resolved that Council requests United Counties of Prescott Russell to modify Schedule A of 2025 Township of Russell Official Plan to recognize that lands subject to OPA 32 previously adopted under Bylaw 2025-70 are to be designated as multi-residential policy area in the Township of Russell Official Plan 2025 adopted under Bylaw 2025-075. Any other questions from members of council on this? Excellent. So we move to item 12, reports from an investigator or ombudsman. We have none. Item 13, notice of motions. We have none. Item 14, question period on meeting of the day. So anyone wanting to ask a question, please remember that you're part of a public record. And I would ask you to identify yourself and sign the registry. Thank you.
Julian Hunt. I've got two questions tonight. First, with regards to the affordable housing requirement on that new development, what's the definition of an affordable housing unit?
So I believe that was kind of discussed in the sense that that is an evolving one at the county level, so we're going to be expecting counties to give us direction on that. Monsieur Bourgon, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Next question. Oh, Councillor Deacon, sorry.
My understanding is that the counties does not have an official definition that deviates from the provincial planning statement. I always mess that one up, PPS.
The PPS, yeah.
And so I am very interested in seeing how they interpret that, because it is a quite rigid definition that sets that ambition very high.
So we will bring that to counties to get a clarification.
I'm just trying to understand from a procedural point how we're putting a requirement on a developer without a definition for that requirement.
Yeah, so that requirement is part of the official plans, and it's just the details of it that need to be ironed out. And so the developer agrees to that requirement, and now it's a question of determining exactly what that means.
It just seems weird that council is approving it based on that without knowing what that definition is.
It's noted in the official plan without that definition being there.
Second, for the Castor-ED intersection, a lot of the residents on the north side of the road have concerns with some of the preliminary plans that we've seen for that, and I just wanted to know where we should direct those. Like, should I just email Monsieur Bourgon directly, or the planning department?
Monsieur Bourgon?
I would say to email the infrastructure department, and we'll be able to address it. If it's something that we can answer, we'll do it. If we need guidance from the county, we'll do it as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Hunt. Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you. All right, so I believe we have item F that we are removing. So motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item 11, reports from departments and council committees. So this is moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Armstrong, and there is proposal to remove item F. So this is moved by Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Councillor Lawrence. So I'll call for the vote to remove item F. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item 11, reports from departments and council committees, except item F. And this is moved by Councillor Deacon. Pardon me?
It's
Okay,
already
so I'll
the
call for the-
motion that's
okay.
on the table.
So I'll call for the vote for all items except F. All in favor? Thank you. Passed. All right, so item F. Let me just bring him back here. All right, so the council received report PD 2025-29 dated June 23rd, 2025, and recommend the draft plan approval subject to the list conditions described under Appendix 3 of this report. This is moved by, so we got to put it on the table, moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Deacon. It's on the table. Questions, comments, amendments? Councillor Deacon.
Yeah, just looking at those density numbers, so I pulled up, in the official plan, we have two sections that approach density. We have one that's percentage based and one that's per hectare, and you have 70% low, 20% medium, 10% high, and then per hectare, 35 units per hectare is low, up to 55 is medium, and then 56 or higher is high. And in the staff report, like I said earlier, that percentage number is blowing past the density requirements. 55% low, that's lower, low density than the percentage in the OP. 22% is slightly higher than the 20% medium, and 23% is what I would consider significantly higher than the 10% for high density in the OP. So I'm unclear, where is my math not adding up in terms of, and I guess my question would be, are we, you know, in the OP, the percentages show up first and then the per hectare. So is the percentage considered the authoritative figure on density?
So, Monsieur Bourgon, the reason for the difference is it because of the extra space that's not accounted for when we're looking at this? When you brought this up, is that why? Because we're not talking about roads, we're not talking about like this is the whole piece of the property, right? This is the entire land space, correct?
Through Mr. Mayor, that's a possibility. I haven't done the math personally in terms of density.
Okay. I would assume that would be the logical explanation for it, but I'm no expert on it either, so.
That would, again, based on the fact that I haven't done the math, that could be one explanation.
Okay. So this could come back, you can come back with the math to us regardless of where we go with this, correct, as a follow-up?
As a follow-up,
Yeah.
we can bring explanation on density in terms of, again, I'm not sure if in terms of the condition themselves.
But in terms of the conditions, we're going based on our official plan and the county's official plan. That's the requirement for this developer, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so without getting into the weeds for us, in terms of exactly how it's going to be, they have to meet the OP requirements, correct?
Yes, and we already have planned to bring more on the density, not only for that subdivision, but for the existing of the rest of town, and to see how it's going to line up with the official plan in the future. That's something that staff wants to bring to council attention in the near future.
Okay, merci, Monsieur Bourgon. Councillor Deacon, I think Councillor Lauren has is it on this subject? So I'll let Councillor Lauren respond. Go ahead.
So procedurally then, from a planning perspective and the planning department approving a project or recommending a project to council, that if I'm understanding the math correctly, where I'm hearing it on this side, I'm hearing it on that side, and I'm seeing it in front of me, is that it doesn't currently meet the official plan percentages for land use, and it doesn't meet the density for land use designation. How does it get approved? How does it get recommended by staff to council?
I think that's where Mr. Bourgon has to come back to us in terms of seeing if that entire space accounts for the roads and the parks and so on in terms of the land use. Mr. Bourgon?
And the other thing too, like all the remaining phases, it's all blocks. So those blocks could be at different density in order to meet the targets.
But
Go ahead, Councillor Lauren.
But the initial should still meet your 70, 20, 10 percentages for it to be approved by council, should it not, to conform to the official plan?
So is it based on the entire piece of land, entire development subdivision, or each phase has to meet the requirement?
It would be on the entire subdivision.
Yeah, so the math is on the entire, is what Monsieur Bourgon is saying. Councillor Deacon?
Councillor Deacon is.
Sorry, you looked at Councillor Armstrong, but said my name.
No, I know, I was pointing, sorry, I didn't realize I did.
Yeah, just to be clear, it's the percentages that, in my mind, are hitting pretty close. It's the per hectare that's off. And so we were looking at a discrepancy on the last official plan between the multi-residential and what happened with that piece that we were looking at again tonight, I believe. I just want to make sure that we're taking a close look at whether a discrepancy like this is going to come up or not, or just so that we can be really clear on what sort of math is being done to reach those density targets. Because I just speaking for myself, they're very important to me. I don't necessarily see density listed in the conditions, and tonight we're being asked to look at the conditions and send those to counties. So Am I correct that there's nothing additional in the conditions relating to density other than the official plan?
Monsieur Bogon, I believe that's the guiding principle is the official plan.
Okay.
Monsieur Bogon?
Yeah, and there's also some mention that some blocks need to be zoned as high density. That's one of the conditions.
Which they would be by nature of the, okay. I just needed to get that clarified, and I would like to hear back from administration down the road to make sure that we, you know, this newly approved at our level official plan is looking into potential discrepancies like that and making
being
sure that we've
followed.
done the right thing. Thank you.
So is it fair to say, Monsieur Bogon, we would like a follow-up in terms of the calculation, how it's being done, and why there appears to be a discrepancy?
Yes, that's
Okay.
noted.
Excellent. So we have a, this item is on the table. Any other questions or comments on it? Councillor Armstrong?
Do we have a timeline on this? In other words, could we delay it until, I know it's a 2-month delay, but is it possible to defer
To
it?
defer it? Monsieur Bogon, what's the impact of deferral?
Because of the time frame that we're at and the holidays, the county needs to approve the subdivision. So those conditions need to be sent to the county in order to meet
And I
our
believe-
deadlines.
Yeah, I believe that item is on the agenda this Wednesday, if I'm correct. Councillor Armstrong?
As our representative on County's Council, can you address this question to the county's planning and forestry staff for us?
I certainly can, yeah.
And that would be an interesting thing to have come back in the minutes of the county's
Sure.
meetings.
Conseiller Lalonde?
So it would seem to me that we could probably still approve this on the basis that our understanding is that it will meet regardless with the
OP
requirements
That's correct.
under the county's official plan. So we're counting on that, and we're expecting that, and on that
And I'll
basis,
re-
we
I'll
can
re-
vote on it.
I'll request confirmation at that vote at
Thank you.
county. Okay, any other comments? Questions? Proposed amendments? Seeing, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And against? And passed. Thank you. All right. So we've been going 2 hours, maybe a quick pause for the cause. Let's say we reconvene at 8:10. Thank you. Louis? All right, thank you. Let's get going. So motion that council approve bylaws. So item 16, motion that council approve bylaws 2025-83 to 2025-89 inclusively for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. And this is moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Deakin. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And passed. Thank you kindly. Item 17, new business reports. We have none. Item 18, other business presented by council members. We have none. Item 17, public consultations, hearings. We have none. Item 20, announcements. Any announcements, members of council? I'll just make an announcement. This is the last meeting before August, and so council is on recess for the summer. We don't anticipate any special meetings. Mr. Gardin? Okay. And so I will publicly wish all staff and members of council, I hope you have an opportunity to have a break. I know there's still a lot of events going on, and we'll be participating in graduations and so on. But I wish you all a great break for your families and some important quality time. Councillor Lauren.
Just a reminder for Canada Day festivities. I know in Russell they put on I think it's the Ag Society and Lions Club put on a phenomenal, I think it's 2-day event now on the 30th and the 1st, with fireworks culminating at Russell High School at dusk on the 1st. And I'm sure there are other Canada Day events throughout the municipality that people can attend. So
Absolutely, thank you. Conseiller Lalonde?
Well, since we're not going to see each other again here for a while, it's not to forget that you're all invited to meet me on Main Street in front of my house, right in the middle of it all, which is what date again? July 15th, not to be mistaken with July 9th at Marionville.
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
Very good.
So meet me on Main Street, please.
At both of them, so we're inviting community to both of those events. Great opportunity to meet some of the community and to see what some of the, I think the fire department's involved. Do we have demos? Looking forward to that. Excellent. Any other announcements? Excellent. So we come to item 21, which usually we fly through, but today we have a strategic discussion, which I'm really excited about. And so this is really an initiation. And I don't think that staff is expecting all the answers here. We're just looking to get a pulse from council on how to guide this next step in terms of that. So as we look ahead to the opening of our new rec complex, a major step forward for our township, it's time to begin this strategic discussion about the future of those assets. So these facilities have served our residents for generations. And so I think it's important to highlight that they hold important history to our community and values. So any decisions about the future have to reflect that. At the same time, we have a responsibility to plan ahead, to be transparent with our residents, and to make smart, fiscally responsible choices. So again, just to clarify, we're not making any decisions tonight. This is the beginning of a conversation, one that has to be shaped not only by council's input, but also by a robust public engagement. So we owe it to our community to have that dialogue openly and fully. So my hope certainly tonight is that we as council could begin identifying the values and priorities that should guide us. So what needs might still exist after the new complex opens? What legacy are we wanting to protect? Where can we be innovative, and how do we ensure we're using public dollars wisely? So I think staff will take our input tonight and begin shaping a work plan over the summer, and we'll continue the conversations this fall with more analysis, options, and opportunities for public to have their say. So before we jump in and open the table, I just wanted to kind of voice my key principles that I think are very important through this process. So first of all, transparency. I think that we need to keep residents informed every step of the way. Engagement, obviously we spoke to that tonight, so prioritize authentic public and stakeholder input, so including all our community organizations, all our user groups. One that's important for me is fiscal responsibility, so ensure that whatever decisions we come up with ensure long-term affordability and service value. Respect for legacy, as I mentioned at the onset, so honor the historical role of those facilities, how they were created, and is there ways to kind of, keep that value somehow, not necessarily keeping those facilities. It doesn't mean keeping the facilities, but recognizing what efforts came from the community to develop those and recognize that somehow as we move forward. The other aspects, two other aspects that I think are important is continuity of service. Obviously, the recreation complex, I know is going to be on budget and on time because Céline keeps guaranteeing me that. But should it not be on time, we do have to be proactive and plan for those delays. And then the other aspect that I think is crucial is that we lock in key planning decisions before the formal election period starts in 2026. Ideally, I'd like for this council to make some decisions before we get into election talking. I think that's important. I think that's important part of what we have the work on a lot of decisions that came about this project, so I think it's important that we continue doing that. So I'd be hopeful to see that. And then it never fails. I turned it off. And then from a communication perspective, I just want to say I'd like to see a dedicated project webpage or public dashboard on this. Issue regular updates through newsletters and social media, and position decisions as part of long-term strategic leadership. I really don't want to have any of these discussions around the election whatsoever. So those are my comments, and I apologize for taking a lot of air on this. So now I leave it open to council. Councillor Lauren?
I've just got a couple of things to start with. The first one, I just question about why we included the Ember Marina and the hall in scenario 1 of the full decommissioning and sale of land. Why can't we have one without the other?
I believe that all options are open. Really, it's to get a pulse, and maybe it was the way it was presented, but really all options are open. Madame Guitard, correct me if I'm
Thank you,
wrong.
Mr. Mayor, members of council. I think it was more for the appraisal part, because that land is one piece of land with the whole acres. So the appraiser just thought that it would be better just to, let's say, severe the land with the arena and the hall, because maybe for the selling value, it would be better. Obviously, it's a bigger part. But definitely, we could definitely get another appraisal just to split the land and get the hall separate from the Ember Marina. I did ask that question last week, and it's still doable.
Merci.
So we have to pay another cost to get that? They couldn't have done it at the same time? Like, I'm just confused because we have the hall that we put significant investment in over the years. We're just gonna do the stairs at the bowling alley this year, and so we're putting more money into this where there could be a potential decommissioning and demolition of that building as part of a land sale without having the information separate in this report. I guess I would have, if we were discussing that, I thought we would have had the arena, the hall, and the other arena as separate items so that we can see exactly what the value is for each one of those. It's very difficult for me to make that determination or make any type of recommendation based on the $1 million estimate, because I don't know where that $1 million estimate is. Is it half for each? Is it 750 for one, 250 for another? So I don't like the way it was presented that way, because now it makes it more difficult to justify and to determine how to proceed with it. That being said, I'm just going to share my preferences for it because I've gone through the report. My preference is the Russell Arena repurpose in some way, shape, or form. To what, I don't know. But I wouldn't sell that property if it was anyway, I wouldn't sell that property. I think there's more value from a community perspective to keep it in another capacity, not obviously as an arena, a functioning arena. The Ember Marina, I think, has worn its usefulness out, and I think that would be land that we could use from a designation perspective to sell and to build on that parcel. But the hall, I would want to keep that building, as it does have multiple different functionalities with it. But I would repurpose the hall itself and not have it as a hall. You know, we talk about things, you know, and I'll throw it out there. You know, an indoor pickleball courts. I mean, why not? You don't need a lot of height. You don't need a lot of space. Air conditioned, be good for summer, be good for winter. I think that would be, to me, would be something that we could look at. The one thing I'm missing from this too, I thought as well, we were talking about the outdoor pool, but it's not in this report. You had mentioned that at the Parks and Rec meeting.
I think it's mentioned, but the value piece is not mentioned.
Okay.
It's at the onset of the report, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yeah, we did not get the pool appraised way back in February, so that's why we're not mentioning any value to the pool. But we did put it in the report because obviously it will have to be discussed at one point.
Okay. And I'll share my thoughts on that as well, as I think we should keep it open as a summer pool. I think you know, as like I said at the Parks and Rec Committee, as someone who lived in an outdoor pool summer after summer after summer, I think it still would hold a lot of value. It can still be used for many different purposes. So I have no problem keeping that one open, but I would lean more towards, again, repurpose, demolition and sale of land at the Ember Marina, and repurpose the community center and keep the pool open during the summertime. That would be my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councillor Lauren. Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, I agree with your comments, Mr. Mayor. You've very comprehensive set of questions there. The historical value of each of the facilities, especially the ones in Ember and the Camille Pichet Center, is something that the general population, the older population of the village of Embrun, certainly holds in great value because of the way it was actually built. And the bowling alley is a unique facility in the township, so that's something that would also be considered in there. It seems to be a rather well-used facility. I don't know, all my three kids used it at some time or another along their childhood. The location of those properties is also key. It's in the center of each of the villages. And for the most part, people can walk to those facilities if they wish. And that's something that I find is of great value to all of the communities. And it's not just each one. We have to address each of the buildings as separate individual buildings to get all of the options available to us. On the other hand, I look at cost. The cost of operating those facilities, whether that be coming from taxation or from user fees, has all been scheduled to be transferred to the rec complex. That means any additional use out of these facilities, not just the rec complex, the new library as well, for the library at one time was intended to go into the Camille Pichet Center. But any additional costs in these has to come from additional taxes or somehow realizing other user fees. And without having a good financial outlook of what that could be, it's hard to make any real decisions on that, because currently they're costing us about, if I remember correctly, $750,000 or something like that, if I remember the old rec complex financial strategy. going there. That's significant. That's, 3.5%, 4% of our taxes. That's the municipal contribution, not the user fee contribution. That's something that we have to consider very carefully. And we've just gone through a major tax increase. And I don't think anybody really has a stomach for another additional cost increase unless they see really good value for that money coming out in the end.
Excellent points, Councillor Armstrong. And I'll just underline your fiscal piece again. I mentioned it at the onset. So I would expect that when we get something from staff, that we'll look at, like those are the cost of this. Where is this money coming from each of the alternatives, but also the community value. I know we can't put some sort of scoring on that, but all of these items will have to kind of be measurable in some way so that we can be accountable to our residents on why we're making some decisions. I want to also echo some of the Councillor Lawrence parts in terms of the overall strategy that he presented. That seems like a logical approach in those two, but I'll pass it on. I'll come back to you, Councillor Lawrence. Is that okay? Conseiller Lalonde.
Okay. Thanks for the time. Appreciate getting this conversation going. We've been hoping for it for a while. And thanks to Madame Guittard for putting some stuff down on paper to get us inspired. I'll echo a few of the comments, and I maybe use an illustration or two, but I think I want to back the thing up also. We really don't have any. This is really the first opportunity we have to look at these buildings and say, what could we do with them? Back in the day, we had ideas with affordable housing through our own recommendations, how we could repurpose them for some of those, to meet some of those requirements. I'll just leave that there. But we have very few assets to speak of. So to Councillor Lauren's point, as far as the Russell Arena, for instance, I wouldn't see that being let go of. And I'm not quite sure about the arena and the Camille Pichet as well, whether those should be let go of. I think it points to the need first, before we start talking about what building and what we could do with it, to look at maybe as trying to establish a plan or a terms of reference or a strategy here in the first place. And it should be a needs analysis without getting too involved. But I mean, and I think it should start with community wealth development. I think we need to pick a focusing point here. What could these buildings offer us going forward? In terms of meeting needs that aren't being filled. We have daycare issues and space. We have, to illustrate with maybe the Russell Arena, just to give one little example. I don't want to go into examples, but there's been a lot of arm wrestling and challenges, for instance, with the Sport and Youth Center over the years. It's trying to do a lot with a little. Isn't it quite an interesting opportunity now maybe to settle some of that in one way, shape, or form by leveraging the arena in Russell to open it up to take some of the steam and the pressure out of the youth center, which now is almost trying to do all things for all people with. And that's why I see the value in the arena becoming, for the first time, a place where staff in the township could let its shoulders down a little. And so that's just the one example, but I just want to pull back to, I think we should look at this from a community wealth development perspective. What could be the uses of these places still? Certainly, I enjoy the idea of, in any event, holding on to them until the rec complex is up and running properly. We may need them, if only in next fall, for transition purposes. So certainly, I see us hanging on to them for some time to come. through the community wealth development lens, if we wanted to look at that way, you know, for the community, by the community, with the community, you know, we could, and through a terms of reference or a plan of some kind, a strategy that we would work on first that staff would help to develop, we would be then looking for, you know, calls for proposals from associations, organizations, builders. I think a lot of what, you know, I have certainly some ideas to share along with the mayor on opportunities, and Monsieur Desgenais, that we had of late discussions with Habitat for Humanity, looking for 3/4 of an acre who can bring in some purpose-built housing. I see the Embry property area as a real good opportunity there. But first to make this known to the public that now we're into this phase, to ask the public to provide some input on what it would see happening, but also to reach out particularly to developers, builders, all the associations, the Ag Society. We have some members here tonight. Well, we have one. And the Lions and the Kin and what ideas might they have as well? It would be the time to hear that and to consider that. I think before we would go out to them, we would establish a terms of reference here, though. These are the things we're going to be looking for. These are some of the markers this is going to have to hit necessarily. For instance, what's its value going to be to the community as a whole? Is there revenue potential for the township? And like I said earlier, we don't have any assets. My position going forward would be none of them, we don't let go of any of them unless we really absolutely have to. What we do instead is dans la mesure du possible, c'est qu'on organise des partenariats plutôt avec des membres de la communauté ou les compagnies, les entreprises, les associations, les organisations. Moi, je voudrais bien plus nous voir entrer dans des partenariats dans la mesure du possible. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a plusieurs parmi eux et les résidents qui ont contribué à bâtir ou à investir dans ces édifices-là dans un premier temps. If I look at the Sport and Youth Club, that was, I mean, Céline, Madame Guitard can help me here, that was Giant Tiger, that was soccer, that was township. And there are a lot of people that got a lot of skin in that game and blood, sweat, and tears. Wouldn't it be great if they helped us with that? So without going off on a tangent, because I could, it's more that we just maybe take this back a few steps, say, well, let's see if we can't establish some sort of, I don't call it a master plan, a terms of reference,
Guiding principles.
Guiding principles, and we decide what we use as the starting point for this, which for me, I suggest that it be about, for community wealth development. How does this make the township better? How does it make the lives of residents and associations and organizations better in terms of fulfilling a need that's not being served? And again, I go back to daycare and things like that, and affordable housing, or purpose-built housing, I would call it. And then where's their revenue opportunity for township? Fait que je vais arrêter là. C'est juste pour vous donner des idées de où ce que je suis. Fait que je veux même pas parler de quelle bâtisse qu'on pourrait regarder ou laisser aller. Je pense que c'est un peu de bonheur pour ça. L'idée quand même encore du conseiller Lorrain, l'idée de la piscine publique, c'est intéressant parce que ça nous coûte peut-être pas cher. It's a venue that in summer is an attractive one maybe to hang on to. Not a lot of people are excited about going indoors to an indoor pool facility in the summer months. Some are. Maybe the seniors are. I don't know. But I know that that I was just in the city of Montreal in St. Henry, and they have the indoor-outdoor, and both were well used on Sunday. I went and did a little reconnaissance, and it just pointed out the value of having the both. So to Councillor Lauren's point, that's something to, and again, the public and some of the associations and the groups operating and the Barracuda clubs and the parents that are behind it could give us some good input and advice on that one. So j'arrête là.
Merci beaucoup, Conseiller Lalonde. Councillor Deakin. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, I don't have anything to say. Of course I do.
I could say that would be a
No,
first.
I'm like very excited for this conversation, and I'm really appreciating, hope I can build on what other folks are saying at the table tonight, especially with regard to that deep desire that I'm seeing in community, you know, building through connection, building through partnerships, and wanting to make sure that the future of these wonderful public assets continues in that tradition is what I'm hearing from the communities, both in Russell Village and in Embrun Village. I'm going to refer to some notes. I heard some keywords spoken, ding, 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 that I'll also be bringing up. It's for that reason, that tradition of these communities, and I think what makes it so strong, that I'd like to see a thorough consideration of township maintaining ownership and guiding the direction of these prominent public lands according to the community's needs and according to opportunities in the community that may need just a position, an organization, a local government, their local government, to catalyze on opportunities. So Councillor Lalonde did mention master plan. That's the ding, ding, ding. I would like to see an exploration of a master plan approach rather than a piecemeal building by building perspective. I think that this is our chance to ask, what do we need? And like I said, local government, we have a unique position here to guide and to connect partnerships, to respond to the aspirations of our community, be they affordable housing, healthcare, new residential builds, new commercial activity on those properties. I'm thinking, you know, originally I was thinking especially with the Embrun assets, seeing that chunk of land as an area to be developed, mixed use, integrated development in the heart of Embrun. That could extend to Russell Village as well. I see the value in that as well. Maintaining revenue generating opportunities in the mix. Looking at leasing out to private, public, nonprofit organizations that may fit with that master plan that the community here determines. Other folks mentioned it already. I hear about lack of childcare, healthcare, purpose-built housing, so many opportunities for recreation facilities, not just the what do we need, but what are folks really excited to start being able to do here in their community, potentially through a private partner. We as a township here have the EcoDev, economic development strategy coming down the pike. We have an excellent recreation master plan coming down that's going to show us what the future looks like in terms of our own service deliveries, as well as the local business community and what they may be looking for, again, in the heart of the village, next to a beautiful park, surrounded by lots of residential, walkable, as Councillor Armstrong alluded to. We also have the township's own HR action plan. There's growth happening here in the township, and looking both at here in the township what that growth may look like, as well as at the county's level and beyond, I think would be an important step in terms of looking at what I'm calling a master plan. But if you want to scale it down, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be that exact word. But again, I think that doing a coordinated exercise, we have this really unique opportunity long-term to have coordination and long-term visioning and to balance market-driven development with public interest goals. And again, just to hit home the dollars and cents of it, which I can certainly appreciate, if I'm not mistaken, through leasing the township would have the opportunity to continue to generate revenues through the lease itself, as well as property taxation on any improvements to buildings, including new builds on our properties. That's what my impression is right now. Administration can correct me on that maybe down the road, but that's my line of thinking. Keep it private, keep it publicly owned, and master plan it, bring in what we know we need and what the local government is uniquely able to bring about in terms of public-private partnerships, et cetera.
Thank you, Councillor Deakin. Councillor Lauren, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, just one piece, and I don't want to say that I'm against any type of partnerships at all, because I'm not. If they are there, they work, that's fantastic. I've been here long enough to know or to have seen the history of the youth center as an example. When the decision was made to shut the youth center down, we went out to the community. We went out to say, is there someone else that wants to repurpose or use it? And there was no interest at that point in time, and we had to shut it down. Once we shut it down, then a group, and I think Mark was part of that group, Councillor Lalonde was part of that group, that said, wait a minute, we'll pick up the pieces and we'll do this, but township still has to own it and run it and whatnot and pay for it. So it just what would that look like, right? And that's the aspect that's there is, you know, there has to be more commitment from any partnership that we go into, and part of that commitment will come with costs, where before the cost piece wasn't there. They didn't want any cost to them. They wanted all the costs to be borne on the township. So that's my only caution to that piece of it, is because we've seen it on a very small scale with the youth center. Now, if we're talking bigger scale, what type of commitment are they looking for? That's all. Other than that, I think, I look forward to more discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Lauren. Follow-up, Councillor Deakin?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and it kind of demonstrates why master planning is such an important step to take, because it's front end, it's intentional. It's what are we looking at long-term visioning wise, and who's going to step up and deliver that? And I'm hearing that it didn't work out long-term for the youth center in Russell Village, unfortunately. And a master planning exercise would insist on what are the actual needs, who are the public or private partners that are actually coming to the table, what is the 40-year, 99-year lease that we're looking at putting in place for those partners. And I think that that's a really great lesson learned that you mentioned.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lalonde?
Just to follow up on Councillor Deakin's and Lauren's, I could certainly help with the experience at the youth center on the sort of best practices from a user group side of things, what could have been done better, and the commitment. But this is the challenge in what we're going to do here, is that there's always been an interest by a number of groups, and it's to be sure that you have it with any groups that step up that can meet the criteria that we end up setting, about a desire for ownership over process. So because with ownership or partial ownership or partnership comes real pride in delivering services and being in a formal arrangement. So I think lessons have been learned, and we would have to, and I think staff have learned a lot with the groups that you've already been working with. I think of Ag Society over the years and the Russell Soccer. I think that'll be really helpful as background information in then setting a new plan forward for how to take this into the next few decades.
Merci, Councillor Lalonde. I think given our presentation this morning from the engagement piece, this morning, did I say this morning? Earlier on, I think there may be a really good opportunity to possibly, I don't know if it's possible, but it'd be great to see a booth at the Meet Me, asking people, what do you want us to do with this? And start kind of gauging some resident feedback. And so I think, well, the more ideas that come into the mix, I think the more that master plan idea could, get some wings. But anyways, any questions from staff pertaining to this? Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I don't think I have any questions. I've heard some key words that resonated a bit with my report. master plan, fill in the gaps, legacy, pride of ownership, future of existing, reinventing the buildings. So I think a lot of your comments did align with my report. So I'm thinking of bringing something back in early fall, probably because master plan also is another key word. The master plan for recreation has started the process. So I could maybe look into what we maybe adding to that. So those are all different items that I could bring back in a report in the fall. So I'm happy to hear your comments tonight, that a lot of them did echo my report, so.
Merci, Councillor Lorton.
Yeah, I think it'd be important to utilize our Parks Recreation Advisory Committee as well and bring that to the next meeting to say,
Sure.
what are your thoughts as a committee and what recommendations would you bring to council based on the strategic discussion that was had, and get their insight as well? Or we bring it up, we wait for some public consultation and feedback, and then we bring it back to the committee again for a formal endorsement of something to council. Just a thought.
Great. Councillor Lalonde?
Yeah, if I could just add that, and I appreciate the work that has been started with Parks and Rec. There's a challenge here that, some of the use of these buildings going, like we were talking about, different options and opportunities, and Councillor Deacon mentioned an eco-dev component here, that I'm just wondering if this shouldn't be a shared jurisdiction with other departments, recognizing that the scope, the potential scope for this could be something, beyond recreation and even beyond daycare and that sort of thing. I just want to make sure we, that, and whether it's coordinated through one group or through the CAO or what have you, that we make sure that we have a broad sort of review of the potential across a number of opportunities, because some will be development when we talk about the potential for revenue generation. And again, I think it's the time to talk about it. And just again, another little illustration. I won't hide the fact that, it would be my great pleasure to try and move a Habitat for Humanity project further down the road with our township. We already know, they know us well, we've met with them, they're interested in our area. There is no agreement of any kind, and there's not even any sort of undertaking, but there certainly is interest. And knowing well that they can build out small or large, 12 units, 16 units, what have you, I see some real potential in Embrun. And I see partnerships in that idea or that illustration that involve local builders and other community groups. So I just want to make sure we're looking at it at 10,000 feet for the time being, so that it includes recreation, but that it also includes economic development. Thanks.
I think I have full faith that it'll be a wholesome overview, but Monsieur Godin, did you want to add something on that?
Merci, Mr. Miles. Well, just to confirm that definitely it's going to be a group effort, and then we're all going to be looking at it from all departments. Because like Councillor Armstrong said earlier, all those funds that are currently operating those facilities now are being transferred to the rec complex. So we're kind of looking at it as vacant properties for now, and to see, with a clean slate, what is it that we need and what can we do with that?
Excellent. Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, and it's just in other uses, keep in mind, from my own experience and what's happening in some of my family, is that we have a shortage of family doctors, for example, in this area. And if redevelopment of one of those facilities would encourage family doctors to come into the area because we would provide them with reasonably priced space or whatever. That may be some type of thing that we would look at, and it could be combined with other things. Daycares is a typical example where such a family doctor's office and a daycare in the same building coexist quite easily. So we have a lot of things, and daycares, family doctors, whatever, they have little cost effect on the municipal tax base, and it's essentially all user fees. So those are some of the things we have to look at in that broad, very high level.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Any final comments from this side of the table? Seeing none, I would just, I would like to, I think we've given a fair bit. We remain available for discussions, and I hope that we certainly, to clarify any points that we've raised. I'm looking forward to seeing this move forward. This is going to be a challenging discussion when it comes to making decisions. We're all coming in with different kind of direction, well, not different directions, that's not the right term, but we all have certain things that are important to us. So I look forward to those debates and discussions, and knowing full well that staff will come with a good, wholesome report where it's much easier for us to make those decisions because the data is there to help us understand it. Monsieur Godet, any other final comments on this?
Oui, merci, Mr. Master. Just to say, so we appreciate all the dialogue. We have a lot of notes taken and a lot of information to digest. And maybe just to set the expectation. So we will be coming back in the fall with a report. We're not going to be bringing a report for council to take a decision on what's going on. It's probably going to be more kind of a plan of action on
The process, yeah.
on how we can move forward with the process and to include the public consultation required and potentially some hiring consultants to help out with master planning or whatever it is that we end up doing. But just to set the expectation, it's going to be a significant decision that's going to set kind of the vision for the future of those buildings. So I think it has to be done well and not too quickly. So, but yeah, we will be coming back after the summer break to update council on where we are and where we're going moving forward.
Can I just get a pulse from council in terms of timeline for making a decision on this? Are you comfortable and wanting to make a decision by the time that by the say the spring of 26, so before we get into elections, or do you foresee this as something that you would want to see the next council tackle? Just a question, Councillor Lauren.
I think the only challenge is if the facility isn't ready, now we've got all these facilities that are still going to have to be operational for the year or for at least a period of time. So then that decision gets delayed, or the implementation of the plan gets delayed, and then into the next council, and then that next council can say, no, we don't like this plan. I don't know. July, I think, Madame Camille, correct me if I'm wrong, but council becomes lame duck in theory as of the closing of nominations, as long as the criteria is met of what would become a lame duck. That's the timing. It's not once nominations start, it's once nominations close, or is it once nominations start?
I would have to review, but I think it would be closer to the end.
Closer to the end, eh?
Yes.
So we're talking July, early July
Yes.
is when we would have to have that. So by the end, last meeting in June is when we would have to have made a decision for that type of thought. So I think it'd be very tough to make a decision by then if we're asking for master planning and studies and reports and public consultations. I mean, we're talking, less than a year. So I don't know if that's possible. Would we want it? Do we want to do it that quickly? Do we want it to make it this council decision? I don't know. It's gonna be tough to meet that timeline if that's the intent of where we at, what we're asking staff to do. Mr. Godet, I don't know if your timing was thinking through you, Mr. Mayor. Like, were you thinking you'd be able to get all of that information to us to make a decision before June of next year, this time next year?
Monsieur Godin?
Through you, Ms. Mayor, I think it might be very difficult. We can definitely do a lot of legwork until then, and it's hard to say today where we can get at that point in time, right? We could come to council for more of a general direction. I doubt that we would have a concrete plan set in stone, like from A to Z by June. We might be able to come back with a lot of information, and for council to make some type of a direction or a policy or something to give us direction as far as where to continue working. I think it would be very difficult to do all of this work and to have a complete plan by then. But again, I think we need to have some discussions internally with all this information and what we have on our each department's needs analysis as well, to see what the work involved is, and we'll probably be able to have a better sense in the fall.
Thank you. Councillor Deacon?
I just want to express what a privilege it is to be at this table as we have this very first conversation. And I think as this council begins to wind down in the fall and into next year, it would be wonderful to have a process in place to be moving down a path, to have selected a process for how to explore and reconceive of these assets. And I think it would also be an honor to pass along to the next council to receive whatever results come from that process that we were able to establish, and with the evidence available to them at that point, turn left or right accordingly.
Any other thoughts from other members of council? Councillor Armstrong?
Just from my experience in the federal government, planning something like this is a longer term process than most people think when you start up. So I agree with Councillor Laurent's comments that we should be looking at having a process in place, baseline data, and the next council's the one that's going to be the one that's going to make final decisions.
Okay. Conseiller Lalonde?
Well, I'm going to slightly disagree. I come from government too, from a Crown corporation, but we got a lot of stuff done. It's a question of attitude, I find, most of the time. If the attitude is well set, then you can expect a good and timely result, but it's about attitude. I think with the help of a consultant at some point, and I appreciate that this is a process we have to be careful with, we have to take our time with, so I don't disagree with any of that. We have to be careful with what we're doing. We have to follow a thorough process, but I think we may want to call on the help of a subject matter expert in terms of, how to synthesize all the information that comes in. I mean, we are talking about 2 arenas and a swimming pool. Now, some might argue, well, no, it's a little more complicated than that. But we're talking about a couple buildings. There's already been a strong appetite from all of the members here, unless I'm mistaken. Certainly, I'll reiterate again the fact that we have very few assets to talk about in the first place in this township. If you try to point to a piece of land that we could make available for something, it isn't there. I mean, we had to rededicate a park so that we could make it available to Maison Interlude. That's how little assets we had to work with. We took a park and we did the right thing, by the way. So to me, I think if we get rolling on this, if staff gets rolling on this, quite honestly, with the help of a consultant for a month or two, I would see something coming back Christmas time or January for us to really sink our teeth into and maybe help to, this is a really good council right now. I admire the brain power and the service and the staff as well. I think we have an opportunity to do something exciting and meaningful And that, to my mind, something that could probably, a path set forward for early spring of 2026. I don't think I'm being naive, and I know there are other priorities and things that have to get done. But I just want to give my perspective on the thing, that I think it's something that's achievable in the early part of next year, all things going well. And that would be my hope anyway, and certainly my offer to be of any service that might be of use to council and the staff.
Merci beaucoup, Conseiller Lalonde. I think you've gotten a bit of a swath of information here. I would like to see in spring us having kind of a direction, but spring will be where we can decide if we need to defer this or not. But it kind of gives you a pulse on where council sits, I guess. I think that's fair. Madame Guittard, anything to add? Any final comments on this? Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. No, it was an interesting conversation, and we will get down to it.
All right. Excellent. Monsieur Godin, any final thoughts? C'est beau. Monsieur Dagenet? No? Okay. Check. Monsieur Bourgon? No? Okay. All right. So item 22, we'll move forward. Item 22A. Pursuant to Section 239(2), 3, and 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 Chapter 25, motion to move into closed meeting at the hour of, I can't see. Oh, I turned it off. 902, otherwise known as 2102, to address matters pertaining to Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 Chapter 25, to consider matters relating to 1, sale of land in the 417 Industrial Park, Report CS 2025-08 S2C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by municipal or local board. Item 2, sale of land in the 417 Industrial Park Report CS 2025-09. Same item 2C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And 3, closed session minutes of the regular council meeting, closed council meeting dated June 9th, 2025. And then, so I need the moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Lauren. Apologies. Call for the vote. All in favor. And we are moving into closed session.